I'd like to call this meeting to order for the special board meeting. Public hearing. I'll call on John Bush to read the resolution.
Good afternoon. I'd like to ask if Dylan or someone can allow me to share my screen, please.
Go ahead, John.
I'll call.
Thank you. Okay. This is a public hearing on the Septic Tank Replacement Assistance Program, otherwise known as STRAP. In the fall of 2018, St. Lawrence County applied for $300,000 in funding through the New York State Community Development Block Grant Program in order to establish a septic tank replacement assistance program. It was designed to assist low and moderate income households to replace inadequate or deteriorated systems. In January of 2019, the county was awarded $3,000. A grant agreement was signed, and it stipulated that all funds must be expended within 24 months. That's by the end of January 2021. The agreement anticipated that 30 households would be assisted. The county estimated that all program funds and program delivery costs would provide a direct benefit to LMI households. That would equal 95% of the grant, and that would exceed the 70% threshold for LMI benefit that's required. Now, the New York State Community Development Block Grant Administration Manual requires that we have 2 public hearings for each grant. One has to be during the application phase, and as it says here, 1 public hearing, if awarded, is to be held during the administration of the grant to solicit comments. That is the purpose of this evening's meeting. The first public hearing was held on November 5th, 2018. We're required to provide the following information. How much money was made available? It was $300,000. This included $246,000 for septic tank replacement activities, $39,000 for program delivery, and $15,000 for project administration. We have completed 27 units. The cost per unit ranged from $1,000 up to a high of $15,800. The amount of CDBG funds that were made available for activities that benefit LMI national objective, as I mentioned before, 95% direct benefit to LMI houses. If any activities resulted in displacement, no activities resulted in displacement. We proposed completing 30 units. We delivered 27 units. That's 90% of the proposed activity. Provide for and encourage citizen participation. We had a public hearing during the application phase, and we're having a public hearing today. We are to provide citizens with a reasonable opportunity to comment. You can comment today. If you choose not to comment today, you can comment until December 31st by letter to my boss, Jason Fotenauer, St. Lawrence County Planning Office, 48 Court Street, Canton, or by calling our office, 315-379-2292, or by email. I'd like to take a minute to describe the CDBG history in St. Lawrence County. We have administered CDBG funding housing programs since 1982. All CDBG funded projects benefit low or moderate income persons. We've done 24 grants to do homeownership assistance. We have enabled 625 LMI households to purchase their first homes. We've also obtained 30 grants to rehab substandard units. These programs have helped 638 LMI households to significantly improve their living conditions. All told, our CDBG housing programs have assisted over 1,260 households. This equals about 3,100 LMI persons, and the housing units improved total about 3% of all occupied housing units in the county. We estimate an economic impact from these programs at over $70 million. We must note that other communities in St. Lawrence County have secured and administered CDBG funded housing programs on their own. These include Ogdensburg, Governor, Messina, and Potsdam, Fowler, and Madrid. And CDBG programs have also been used for other purposes: community planning, water and sewer projects, community centers, and economic development projects. That's the end of my prepared notes. Are there any questions?
Does anyone have any questions for John?
Where do I sign up?
Where do you sign up? You would
Yeah.
contact the St. Lawrence County Housing Council, and they are our subrecipient, and they do the income eligibility and the application phase.
St. Lawrence County Housing Council.
Yes, also known as the North Country Housing Council. They're at 19 Main Street in Canton.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? I'll remind you that any citizen wanting to talk regarding this public hearing is limited to 5 minutes. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? If not, go ahead, Ben.
Just for this part?
Just for this part.
Okay.
Yep. This meeting's adjourned. We'll start the next one at 5:10, I guess. Yeah, how you doing?
Pardon?
How you doing?
Well, I'm dying of COPD because some fella moved out of the burg when I was 12 and taught me how to smoke cigarettes so I could steal them from my mommy
Yeah.
and give them to him.
Yeah.
People ain't like that, are they?
You're claiming yourself as a victim, an independent rancher like you're claiming yourself as a victim. Come on, take responsibility.
Well, I was 12 years old.
I'd like to call this public hearing to order. And I'd like to call on the deputy clerk to read the public hearing. Kelly, are you here? Yeah.
Notice is hereby given by the Chair of the St. Lawrence County Board of Legislators that the Chair and the members of the Board of Legislators of the County of St. Lawrence will meet at the Board of Legislators Chambers Courthouse located at 48 Court Street, Canton, New York at 5:10 p.m. on Monday, December 21st, 2020 for the purpose of conducting a public hearing regarding adoption of an implementation plan per Executive Order 203 of Governor Andrew M. Cuomo, New York State Police Reform and Reinventive Collaborative as follows. Whereas Executive Order Number 203, New York State Police Reform and Reinventive Collaborative requires all police agencies to perform a comprehensive review of deployments, policies, procedures, and practices, and develop an improvement plan. And whereas on July 13, 2020, the sheriff presented to the St. Lawrence County Board of Legislators an overview of the steps proposed to be taken by the sheriff's office to comply with Executive Order Number 203. And whereas a stakeholders group, as defined by Executive Order Number 203, was thought on October 13, 2020, to discuss and consider evidence-based policing strategies, including but not limited to support policies, procedural justice, and studies addressing systematic racial bias, racial justice in policing, implicit bias awareness training, de-escalation training and practices, law enforcement assisted diversion programs, restorative justice practices, community-based outreach and conflict resolution, problem-oriented policing, hotspots policing, focused deterrence, crime prevention through environmental design, violence prevention, and reduction intervention, model policies and guidelines promulgated by New York State Municipal Police Training Council, and standards promulgated by the New York State Law Enforcement Accreditation Program. And whereas a public forum was held on October 21st, 2020, including the stakeholders, to allow for public input on the evidence-based policing strategies. And whereas on November 9th, 2020, the sheriff presented the proposed implementation plan to the St. Lawrence County Operations Committee. And whereas an additional public hearing will be held on December 21st, 2020 for further public input. The Sheriff's Office would like to ensure that all of its citizens are treated equally, fairly, and justly before the law and with greater transparency. And whereas after considering the input offered by the stakeholders and the public, the implementation plan deputies with body cameras, improving debriefing of deputies after critical incidents, provide additional training in areas of mental health and de-escalation, policies and procedures to ensure highest standards and accreditation, increase community interaction with regional town hall meetings, as well as providing positive information to the public media and training for a public relations deputy. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Legislators adopts an implementation plan per Executive Order Number 203 of Governor Andrew M. Cuomo, New York State Police Reform and Reinventive Collaborative, and be it further resolved that certified copies of this resolution be forwarded to Governor Andrew Cuomo, Senator Patty Ritchie, Senator Elizabeth Little, Senator Joseph Griffo, Assemblyman Mark Walczyk, Assemblyman Billy Jones, Assemblyman Robert Smolin, Assemblyman Ken Blankenbush, and New York State Budget Director Robert Majuka.
Thank you, Kelly. Would anyone have any comments and like to address the board regarding this public hearing? If so, please approach the podium, and you've got 5 minutes, and introduce yourself. Go right ahead, sir.
I've got copies because I have a tendency to drift. If you want a copy to read along with, or do you want me to just go ahead?
No, that's all right. No, that's fine. Go right ahead.
Okay.
Just let us know your name and where you're from, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I take my mask off at 5?
Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Whew, that's much better. All right, my name is Michael Owen. I'm from Colton. And my address and everything is on the bottom here, so. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts as part of the record, especially now as we struggle with the question of how to make a more peaceful future here in St. Lawrence County and become a model for others facing the same dilemma. There can be no doubt that 9/11 set off a huge wave of law enforcement hiring. At the same time, New York State passed lots of laws that seem unnecessary. It's now illegal to have a sticker on the back window of your car, even if the dealer put it there. It's illegal to leave your hitch ball in your hitch receiver if you're not towing anything. Tinted windows are illegal if they are as dark as the ones on police cars. It is illegal to have a license plate obscured in any way, including a frame. These laws and many others I can't cite, are on the books, yet no one from Albany feels obligated to tell anyone that they have been passed. Adding to the problem of new laws, there are about 20 times as many law enforcement people now as there were on 9/11. We have campus cops, village cops, county cops, state cops, border cops. We have multiple federal cops, ICE cops, Homeland Security cops, FBI cops. Some of these agencies came along post 9/11, some didn't, but they all have increased the number of employees tremendously. Those increases have budget increases that rose in lockstep. On top of these two other problems, the cost of fines has gone up astronomically. $5,000 for a DWI, $140 for not wearing a seatbelt. The state has imposed minimum fines and local courts go along with it and try to recover some of their costs with matching fines to avoid raising taxes. Add to the fact that lawyers and judges come from better income jobs and are used to better pay. This results in people who have a harder time empathizing with poverty than poor people do. Lastly, the system is racist in nature. The vast majority of prisoners are BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. This can be seen in Canton courts in every section. 25 to 40% of people on trial are members of a visible minority. St. Lawrence County has a population in these demographics with less than 5%. I believe it starts with the cops. They see a black or brown person and ask, who's that? They get a plate number, they run it through the onboard computer. When it comes up that the person has prior offenses, they pull them over for any reason. A license plate frame is good enough to stop them. Then they issue the ticket to cover their own action, fearing they could be viewed as racist. Next is court. Many cases are dismissed, but the person has to fight it. When you go to court, you may come out worse than you worse than if you had just kept your mouth shut and pled guilty. Either way, it's an injustice that the system doesn't pay for. All these problems add up to a form of unlegislated taxation right here in the poorest county in New York State. My question has become, what can be done about it? I think it's safe to say asking New York State to reverse course it has already taken is futile. Albany is seeking our opinion to implement a plan they have already decided on. We are a stepping stone to that agenda. So we need a course of action that addresses the problem locally. Cops could stop pulling people over for minor crimes, but in my opinion, they won't. Courts need to be directed to refuse to prosecute all crimes in the category that I'm calling trivial. I would further say that they need to be directed not to prosecute unless it's a third offense the following violation: speeding under 15 miles an hour over the posted limit, signaling violations, right on red, rolling stops, expired inspection stickers, unlicensed driving after revocation, DWI and DWAI violations of controlled substance laws would only be prosecuted if they are associated with an accident. Border violations can only be prosecuted if they occur within 5 miles of the border. All state police, Homeland Security, ICE, FBI must be approved by the sheriff's office before any action can be taken. What I'm advocating for is the sheriff's office to become the lead agency for all law enforcement action in St. Lawrence County. And to ward off corruption, it also becomes the target of any and all lawsuits arising from police actions. Lastly, besides reforming the way the system works, we need to shrink police and law enforcement budgets to whatever extent we can. There are just too many cops. Thank you for your willingness to hear me out, Michael Fiona, et cetera.
Thank you, Michael. You mind if I keep that?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Is there anyone else like to comment on this public hearing? John Burke? Mr. Burke?
I apologize for not getting to you before the hearing, but will there be additional opportunity for comment? I know I had a phone call from a constituent that had trouble accessing the Zoom and was very much interested in commenting on the proposal. So I guess I'm just wondering, Dave, if there will be an additional opportunity for those people to speak.
Well, is the sheriff on board here anywhere? Brooke?
He's here.
I am.
Did you hear his question, Sheriff?
Yeah, I mean, that's up to I would direct that to Ruth and the board. I mean, we've had occasions to talk about this to the public twice before this, and now again today. So we're ready to go with the resolution as it's written.
So this will appear on the full board meeting in January, I'm assuming.
Mr. Chair,
So there'd be a chance for public comment. Go ahead, Ruth.
this resolution will appear when you convene the special board meeting following this public hearing. There is also community participation scheduled for that. I'm not sure that would address what Mr. Burke is asking. Certainly, there's always an opportunity before every board meeting that any individual can come and speak to any issue they would like. That's an option also. And certainly this individual could speak to the sheriff or at any point to entertain a conversation as well.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. Ms. Taggart, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for Sheriff Big Wharf. I went on the website to see if I could find the actual proposal and I couldn't very easily. I may have missed it, okay? But is it posted there?
Yes, it's posted on our app and the Facebook page, and there was a link to the PowerPoints that we have presented.
I saw the link to the PowerPoint. So is there anything in addition to that that we had to write up that's the actual stuff we're sending? I don't know what format you have to present this to Albany and what the reforms were. Are we talking about the same thing?
Yes, yep. So the deputy clerk sent out that when she sent this out. So it's been out in the public for the review. And again, we had 2 public forums that they could have spoke before, which we wanted to, obviously. And then tonight with the public hearing, and then again tonight at the public forum before the board meeting to give them all opportunities to speak on this. But as you look at the resolution, we've been working on this since June or July of this year. So it's we've been working on this. So again, that's why the resolution is in front of the board tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no problem.
Mr. Arkwright, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe just from a point of information that I think you just inquired as this resolution may be on the January full board when it will not be. It will be.
No, it's going to be on this, Tony. Yeah. No, I stand corrected. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, Mr. Burke, go ahead, John.
Well, I guess just a general question. I'm wondering if that could be. I mean, we've got plenty of time to get to pass the resolution. I'm wondering if, for the sake of anybody who didn't have an opportunity to speak, if we could postpone the vote until the full board in January and that would give one more opportunity for the public to speak at the beginning of the board meeting.
Well, I believe I'd leave that to the vote of the board, I guess. Do you want to host a vote to see if we want to postpone it or move forward with it tonight? Mr. Akers?
I think it has to be done. Ask Brooks. I think it needs to be done tonight.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Akers.
So I think that we've done our due diligence. That was what what Albany was requesting. And I think if you look in the final whereas, and it says, after considering the input offered from the stakeholders and the public, which Brooks had talked about, they had met several times. The implementation plan includes equipping the sheriff deputies with body cameras, so that's a change. Improving debriefing of deputies after critical incidents. That has been done in the past. It looks like there's going to be more emphasis on that. And certainly providing additional training in the areas of mental health and de-escalation. And review of all policy and procedures to ensure the higher standards and accreditation. Increase community interaction with regional town hall meetings. So it sounds like these regional town hall meetings will continue, as well as providing positive information to the public through social media and training for our public relations deputy. So I think those are in the body of that paragraph that I just read. Those are the changes that have been implemented. Those are the changes that were offered by the stakeholders and the public. And I would support moving on and moving on this resolution tonight.
Mr. Perkins, did you?
I thought that the sheriff had said we had a time limit on this when we were doing this. I thought we had to do it by the end of the year. If we could ask the sheriff.
Brooke, is there a time limit on this?
It has to be done by April 1st, but obviously we were shooting for a goal by the end of the year. It's not steadfast, but I can add to, I have put out to the public on many occasions. They can call me, come see me personally. We put out many public forums for them to speak, but I'll leave that up to the board what they want to do with this resolution. We've been working on this since June, July, and we put 6-7 months into this. I think it's prepared pretty well. I've explained it well to you legislators 3 times. So I'm not going to really speak on that. I believe we have a great police reform package. And we've done our due diligence, and things like that. So that's my take on that.
All right, thank you, Brooke. All right,
Sure.
let's do did you want to speak? Well, go ahead, Ruth.
This is a public hearing. I'm not sure that a vote is in order, though it could be taken at the special board meeting in a few moments.
Okay. Yep, that's fine. Perfect. Thank you. Pat, did you want to speak on this public hearing or the full board?
I didn't drive over here to Canton and spend all that gas money and pay them taxes to the county.
I know you want to speak. Do you want to speak to this resolution or do you want to speak to the full board meeting? You want to speak to the full board citizen participation? That's coming up next.
Oh, the full board's coming in?
Yeah, the full board meeting, isn't that?
Well, I want to make a public hearing, on 203, Executive Board of 203, police reform.
Yeah,
This is right now.
right now.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Okay,
that's
what I
quick.
want to speak
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
My son said that he'd like to speak and donate me his minutes. Is that possible?
No, he can, if RL would like to speak, he can speak with you right afterwards. Go right ahead. 5 minutes.
No, but he couldn't give me his 5 minutes.
Take your 5 minutes. Yep.
Okay. Good evening, Sheriff. I read a notice about this hearing, well, anyway, I guess it's on this Executive Order 203 from Governor Cuomo, police reform. I want you to understand that your office is the only executive member of our checks and balances in St. Lawrence County. You are the only executive branch who's here to see over what judicial does and the legislators. You're also the only one of 62 legal law enforcement officers in the state of New York because you are elected by the people. The rest of the chiefs of police are all appointed. So you are closest to the people. You're the executor in St. Lawrence County. You have the power. There's an organization called the Posse Comitatus that started in 900 AD in England when sheriffs were first appointed. The Posse Comitatus came to the United States. There was an act of 1792 and one of 1807, which is extremely hard to find if you look up Google or DuckDuck or one of the search engines. All they seem to want to talk about is the additions they put on the Insurrection Act or the Posse Comitatus Act. Well, the original acts boldly stated that the sheriff has the authority to call upon the militia if he ever needs help with lawlessness in his county. It states this, contrary to what they call the Posse Comitatus Act now, is the power for the federal government to step in and bring a standing army and a standing navy in order to take care of the lawlessness in these counties and various states. Well, if you get back to the original 1807, which was the heart and the soul of the Posse Comitatus Act, it specifically says militia. At that time in 1807, there was a federal standing army and there also was a navy. We had been to Tripoli. Well, they've overrode this and taken it from militia into the federal government. But if you look into the Posse Comitatus Act, it's a group of any able-bodied citizens over the age of 15 who could be deputized with the same authority as your deputies. Now, there's a part of the Posse Comitatus Act, there's got to be a charter, there has to be recorded with the county clerk's office and in your office that you can draw upon any time that you want. Now, this would be police reform in the reverse, and I think if we see what's going on in the nation today, instead of driving forward to make more reforms and give the federal government more money, we should return to the Constitution in which you took an oath. And I want to say I was very happy to see you and Thanksgiving say that you weren't going to come to my house because I had more than 10 people in it. And I was very happy to see that you chose, instead of following Como's executive orders, you chose to follow the Constitution. Now, prior to this, when we were having the movement for a sanctuary county for the Second Amendment and a sanctuary county for the whole Constitution, you weren't in favor of it. You thought it was more important to do what Governor Cuomo said than it was your oath to the Constitution. I hope what you did in Thanksgiving is an example of how you've changed your mind, and you are here to defend the Constitution. You are here to be a check and balance over the judicial and the legislators. And you will bring back the power to the county, because Posse Comitatus is a Latin phrase which means power of the county. We are supposed to be the strongest government in the country next to the townships because they're closest to the people. The state and the federal government are the lower governments. Somehow we twisted this up. We've twisted up many, many things. It's come through our education system. It's the destruction of knowledge. It's like trying to look up Posse Comitatus and the computers won't even tell you what it is. You have to go to a library back in a dusty shelf and dig out a book to see what's going on with it. We definitely need reform of the police force. The gentleman earlier spoke about how many more police there are here than there was before. That needs to be reformed. We don't need them. We need a posse. They could take care of the drug problem in Messina and St. Lawrence County because they could be the eyes of the sheriff. And they would have the power to give testimony for warrants, and we could clean up St. Lawrence County, and we could help all the families that have been destroyed by the drug problem and the various problems with drugs in the county. So I hope you consider this, what I've said, and look up the Posse Comitatus. I'm going to try to gather some people together and make a charter, file it with the county or with the county clerk, and then talk to you sometime face to face, because we need to do some serious business if things are gonna go the way it looks, Socialism's Funny, there's a cartoon on that, I hope you can see it, 1948.
Thank you,
Thank you
Patrick.
very much.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for taking you people's time,
No,
but
that's fine.
that's
Thank
why
you.
you're paid.
Yeah.
And I know you don't make as much as Nancy Pelosi. Or Schumer either.
Any other comment regarding,
Thank you.
any other comment regarding this public hearing? Closed. Thank you. Oh, no, it's good. Okay, now we got a special board meeting. I'd like to call to order this special board meeting, and I need a motion for suspension of the rules. Offered by Mr. Denisha, seconded by Mr. Perkins. Any discussion on the suspension of the rules? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Carried. I need a motion for the approval of the agenda. Moved by Mr. Perkins, seconded by Mr. Akers. Any discussion on the agenda? All those in favor? Oh, excuse me, Mr. Burke?
Is this a time that I would move to postpone it, or should we wait until the other? I mean, I don't think a week is going to make a big difference, but I would like to make sure the public has anybody who hasn't had a chance to speak. That's not me, and I don't think it's the rest of the board. We've all had ample opportunity. But if any of our constituents haven't had opportunity, I'd like to see them given that opportunity.
Well, are you making a motion to the board to?
Mr. Chair, point of order, that motion to table will be done under presentation of the resolutions, number 6.
Okay. All right, so noted, though, John. Yeah,
That was
that's
what I
fine.
was asking, Dave, yeah.
Okay,
Thanks.
that's fine. Thank you. Okay,
Eric, can the
Any
deputy
citizens
clerk call the
part-
roll?
go ahead, Ruth.
Roll call.
Can the deputy clerk call the roll, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped by it. Yep.
That's okay, just for the record. Thank you.
Reagan,
Here.
Forsythe,
Here.
Lightfoot,
Here.
Sheridan,
Here.
Smithers,
Here.
Anisha,
Here.
Perkins,
Here.
Akers,
Here.
Fay,
Here.
Haggard,
Here,
Piaco. Here. Burke,
Here.
Arquette,
Here.
Terminelli,
Here.
Curran,
Here.
15 present.
Thank you. Now we have a citizens participation. Anyone that would like to address the board? You're limited to 5 minutes. Scamparelli?
I won't take 2 minutes of your time.
There you go. Welcome.
Good to see you.
Please announce your name and address, too.
Sure. My name is Dan Scamperly. I'm an Augsburg City Councilor. It's good to see you. Long time no see, Bill. I'm up and walking, huh? Look at that. I just, I wanted to say thank you for the negotiations, the recent negotiations on sales tax. I know Mr. Akers sent a resolution to Augsburg City Council last week, and we unanimously, of course, agreed to move forward with that 3-year extension. And we appreciate that. I think it's in the betterment of everybody that we get through this COVID right now, take this extension and we move forward with the county and what's going on. And my fellow councilor, Mike Powers, was going to join me tonight. He's president of NYSCOPA, and of course, they're going through a lot of stuff right now.
Yep.
So he stayed home, but we just wanted to touch base and ask you for your support to keep this going. I think it's best right now that that we all move forward. I don't know if I got to keep the mask on or not.
Go right ahead.
Take it off. But I think it's in the best interest of everybody, the towns, the villages, Augsburg, the county, that we look to each other to be partners. And we, of course, our river community, we're looking forward to some economic development. And I've seen a change in the city in the last 10 years that I've been on this board, and it seems like we're doing a lot of river building and things like that. Now we have a new investor on the river that just came to us this year. And I think if we play this right, Ogdensburg's gonna start moving forward in the right direction. And we can all be partners here in our sales tax agreement. And so I'd like to see that happen, and thank you for helping to keep us alive, those of you that will vote yes, to keep this going right now. So, any questions for me on the city?
Dan, this isn't back and forth.
Yeah, same thing as the city council.
Yeah.
Once in a while, we allow it. I
No,
just didn't
that's
know if
fine.
you guys had anything. So, but I just want to say thank you for that resolution, and look forward to continuing this agreement for a few more years. See how things go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other citizen who wants to participate? Okay, I'll move on to presentation of resolutions. Mr. Denisha. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution, the adoption of an implementation plan for Executive Order number 203, Governor Andrew M. Cuomo, New York State Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative, and move for its adoption.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Akers. And Ms. Curran. I can see you, Rita. Any discussion? Mr. Burke?
I would move to have it tabled until the first full meeting of January of 21.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Fay and Mrs. Haggart. Any discussion?
There is no discussion.
Then it's a vote. Want to do it as roll call? We'll do it as roll call vote, please.
Burke,
Who was first called? I'm sorry.
John Burke,
Oh, yes, yeah.
Arquette,
No.
Terminelli,
No.
Curran,
No.
Reagan,
Yeah.
Forsythe,
No.
Lightfoot,
No.
Sheridan,
No.
Smithers,
No.
Denisha,
No.
Perkins,
No.
Akers,
No.
Hay,
Yes.
Haggard,
Yes.
Piacco,
Yes.
4 yes, 11 no.
Okay, so the motion to table fails. Is there any further discussion on this resolution? Mr. Akers?
I'd like to commend the sheriff for going through this procedure. I mean, it looked like a lot of homework, and I think that in the discussions that the sheriff had with this body, that much of this, what was required in Executive Order 203, I'm pleased to say that the sheriff and the department were already doing many of these things. I do think that the things that I read off in the public hearing part, in that final whereas about the using of the body, I can't get the word out, using the plan for body cameras and doing further studies about training for the areas of mental health and de-escalation. I think those would be important, would serve our public well.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Dan,
I'm sorry, someone spoke up.
Dan had his hand up to speak, I believe.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dan.
Basically,
Go ahead.
I was questioned by some people from our district saying that this is right before Christmas. A lot of people are not going to take the time to be able to attend this public hearing. Could we delay it for a week? And I was hoping that could happen.
Okay, thank you. All right, back to the vote. All in favor of the vote, signify. Any opposed? Mr. Fay and Mr. Burke. And that's it, I believe. Ms. Haggard, you opposed or for? I couldn't tell.
This is the vote, whether we're going to move the resolution, right? Now,
Right.
okay,
Right.
no, I voted for it.
Okay, thank you. Vote passes. Next resolution, Mr. Sheridan, you want to?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a resolution modifying the 2021 budget for the Department of Highways for Depot Street Bridge over Deer River, bin number 3220850, and I move for its adoption.
Is there a second? By Ms. Curran, Mr. Perkins, and Mr. Akers, and Mr. Arquette. Any discussion? Mr. Arquette?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Along with Don Chambers, I'd like to thank Don Chambers for his work on this. And along with Don, I'd like to thank the New York State DOT Region 7 Planning Director, Scott Doctour, and certainly thank the Governor's Office for the funding and as well Congresswoman Stefanik that pursued federal funding on behalf of this project. So I'd like to thank all of those people for the Depot Street Bridge. And I'd also like it as a co-sponsor, please.
Okay, so noted, Don. Anyone else? Any further discussion? This is a roll call vote. Kelly?
Arquette,
Yes.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
Yes.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Smithers,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
Yes.
Haggard,
Yes,
Piacco,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
15 yes.
Thank you, Kelly. Next resolution, Mr. Sheridan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Friend Commercial Contracting for replacement of the Depot Street Bridge over Deer River, bin number 3220850, and I move for its adoption.
Second by Mr. Denisha, Ms. Curran, Mr. Arquette. Any discussion on this resolution? Mr. Arquette again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor for this resolution as well.
So noted.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor of this resolution, signify.
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. Next, County Administrator. Ruth?
Good evening, everyone. I'll delay my comments of my normal county administrative report for the Finance Committee meeting. Tonight, I am overjoyed to share with you and the folks in Hubleton. Great pleasure that St. Lawrence County joins the family and friends of Doug White, sending wishes for his happiest 100th birthday and celebrating Doug White Day in Hubleton, New York tomorrow, December 22nd, 2020. I'd like to share a message on behalf of all the Board of Legislators. As you celebrate this wonderful milestone, we hope you'll reminisce and reveal a life of great years, no doubt, rich accomplishment. You have shown the courage to persevere through the Great Depression and war, enlisting in the Navy during World War II and serving our great country from 1942 through 1945. Born on December 22nd, 1920, you've witnessed remarkable changes over the past century while raising a family with your beloved wife of 74 years in your hometown of Hubleton, New York, in St. Lawrence County. We are truly grateful for your contributions, our new centenarian, to the American story, in particular, the story of St. Lawrence County, and we wish you all the best for the coming year. Tomorrow, historian LaFavor will present the certificate on the county's behalf to Mr. White. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Very nice. Last week, my dad celebrated his 94th year, served in World War II, and his goal is 5 score. So
Very
Fingers
nice,
crossed,
very nice.
yeah.
That's all I have.
Is there any further business come before this board? We're adjourned. Thank you. Got the official on TV. You what? I found mine after you gave me. No problem. I had the same problem last meeting, you, thanks for doing it. I know that. So, we're a team, buddy.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee agenda for December 21st and approval of the agenda. Motion by Mr. Forsyth, seconded by Mr. Denisha. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the minutes for November 23rd. Moved by Mr. Denisha, second by Mr. Sheridan and Ms. Curran. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next up is our COVID-19 update with Dr. Dana McGuire and Dr. Andrew Williams. Who would like to go first?
So
Dr. Williams?
that's easy. It's just going to be me tonight.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So good evening. I'll be doing the presentation. Dana did provide some of the information that I'm going to go over. The first thing I do want to start with sort of the national perspective because it informs what's happening locally. And I'm going to start with a little bit of good news, which is in both the Midwest and the upper Midwest, some of the states are seeing declines in cases. There is unfortunately some bad news, which is that we have more than 17 million cases, more than 315,000 100,000 deaths. And we had one day last week where there were more than 3,600 deaths just in one day. As far as the regional update, and again, that's a 7-county region. If you look at the number of cases per 100,000 residents, we're right around 33.4. And if you look at percent positive for testing, it's about 4.6. When you look at St. Lawrence County, and this is data that's updated as of today, we've had 1,814 cases total. Right now we have 437 active cases, a little more than 1,300 recovered cases. We have 25 people who are hospitalized, and we've had 34 deaths. For testing, we've done more than 100,000 tests so far. As far as cases per week, right now we're at 232 for this past week. The asterisk is there because the data for the week is not complete. And if you look at average daily cases by week, we're at 46.4. So since we're a county of just slightly over 100,000, if you compare to the region, we still are having more daily cases. I did want to put this slide up. This is data from New York State, but it does look at where people are getting the COVID infection. And if you look at the top of the table, household and social gatherings account for nearly 74% of the cases. And I think if you look at the epidemiology graph of what we've seen in this community, clearly Thanksgiving was a contributing factor. And I just want to put out there that I think as we look at the winter holidays, we just need to encourage people to plan safely. I think it's also worth mentioning that I could just as easily put a slide up about how social isolation is bad for people's health. So I do want to emphasize that I think we should emphasize physical distancing, not so much social distancing. And when we think about the holidays are important for spiritual reasons and other reasons. People need the holidays. We just need to do them safely. Because we have had a significant increase in the number of cases, the Department of Health has been working very hard to communicate with patients who are positive or patients who are contacts just as quickly as they can. But we have made some partnerships with the testing centers, with the hospitals and the clinics. Dana and her team have gotten information out to the testing centers so that when people are tested, they have information in hand so that while they're waiting for a call from a public health nurse, they know what the next steps are. So these are just some examples. For instance, what do people do once they get tested? Gives them the appropriate information. And then if they're positive, it tells them what the next steps are. Likewise, when people are tested, they're given a contact tracing tool so that they can be prepared for when public health gets in touch with them. And so that we can do the contact tracing just as efficiently as possible. I did want to give a brief update about testing. I think at a previous meeting, we talked about a potential role for a mass testing site. I just wanted to show you what we are doing in St. Lawrence County and also give some comparisons. So if you look at the past week, we did nearly 6,000 tests just in 1 week. And I put here that the colleges are not in session. They do contribute to the overall number of testing, but when they're not in session, they're not doing so much testing. So we did nearly 830 tests per day across the county. Now, if you look at how we compare to other parts of the region, so for St. Lawrence County, we've tested more than 100, more than our population. So we put here a percent tested versus population. We put 120%. It is important to note that a number of people are tested multiple times. So I don't think it's exactly 120% of the population, but we certainly tested well more than 100,000 people. And if you compare to a neighboring county like Jefferson County, where they've tested just about 70,000 people, or 60% of their population. So just to give some perspective on how we're doing for testing in this county, which we've really made a priority. I wanted to shift gears and talk about the vaccines. So as we have discussed at previous meetings, the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine has been approved and is now in the process of being distributed. Moderna did also just receive its emergency use authorization from the FDA. And both of these vaccines are very similar. So they're both called RNA vaccines. They both require 2 doses. The studies showed that they're approximately 95% effective. The difference is the Pfizer or BioNTech vaccine requires this very intense cold storage, whereas the Moderna vaccine does need to be stored in a freezer, but it's much less temperature sensitive, which means it's going to be much easier to be distributed. So New York State expects to receive, at least initially, 170,000 Pfizer doses and 346,000 Moderna doses. The Moderna doses we think are essentially on the way. However, we have quite a few New Yorkers. So a big discussion is how these are going to be distributed. And the terminology is that there's going to be phased distribution. And this is something that's essentially dictated by New York State Department of Health as well as the governor. And the basic principles are that you want to maximize benefits and you minimize harms. The focus is on maintaining hospital capacity and critical infrastructure throughout the state. protecting those who cannot physically distance themselves from COVID positive patients. So that would be healthcare workers, but also EMS, law enforcement, and others. And protecting those who are at greatest risk of death or disability should they become infected with COVID. So those are the basic principles of these phases. When you look at the phases, so in the past, I talked about what the CDC was recommending, which was sort of phase 1A, B, and C. This is essentially New York State's version of those phases with some New York State specific changes. So phase 1 is going to be healthcare workers, both clinical and non-clinical. The initial emphasis is on people who are doing inpatient medicine. Long-term care facility workers, as well as residents. And then the people who are in those long-term care facilities. Please note that in the first line, EMS providers are considered a top priority, and that's something we're going to talk about. So for phase 2, and I realize these slides are a little bit hard to read. I'm certainly happy to share them with people afterwards. But so we're looking at first responders. So fire, police, National Guard, Border Patrol, which is relevant to our community, would also be on there. And then teachers, childcare providers, public health workers, essential frontline workers, critical infrastructure people, and then some individuals who are particularly high risk due to their comorbidities. Phase 3 right now says individuals over the age of 65. The CDC is starting to use the age of 74, but and then also individuals who are younger than 65, but who have certain high risk characteristics. Phase 4 is all other essential workers. And then phase 5 would be healthy adults and children. As I'll mention later, right now, the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines are not approved for people under the age of 16. But phase 5, by the time phase 5 rolls around, it's very likely we'll have other vaccines available, which may be approved in that age group. So right now we're in phase 1. And as I mentioned, there are 3 groups in phase 1. The hospitals are responsible for 2 of those groups, and St. Lawrence Health System is considered a regional hub, and they're the one regional hub in this county. So the first group are healthcare workers, and the second group are the emergency medical services crews. As far as group 3, which is the long-term care facility staff and residents, that's actually in the hands of the pharmacies. And in our community, one of the local pharmacies is going to be doing the majority of the vaccination for the long-term care facilities. So again, we're right now just in phase 1. There are these 3 groups, and the hospitals are responsible for 2 of the groups, and pharmacy is responsible for essentially for the nursing home staff and residents. I also wanted to talk a little bit about this, the way it's being implemented. So in the North Country, there are regional hubs. So St. Lawrence Health System is a regional hub. And that just means that, particularly for the Pfizer vaccine, that's where the Pfizer vaccine was sent, as well as to CVPH. St. Lawrence Health System is then responsible for vaccinating healthcare workers throughout the community, including at other hospitals, with the vaccine that St. Lawrence Health System is storing. There's also something called a Regional Vaccination Hub Coordinator, and that's CVPH. So I just want to make sure people are aware of what the terminology is. So the hubs, again, are responsible for completing phase 1 for groups 1 and 2, and then overseeing the implementation of phase 2. And then when phase 3, 4, and 5 come along, it's probably going to be a collaboration between hospitals, pharmacies, FQHC, and clinics. I did want to just go over a few sort of frequently asked questions in anticipation of some people's questions about the vaccine. So one of the questions that comes up is, I've already had COVID-19. Do I still need to be vaccinated? And the recommendation coming down from the CDC and the FDA is yes, it's still recommended that people get vaccinated. If someone has an active case of COVID-19, they're not supposed to be vaccinated. but once they've recovered, vaccination is recommended. And the reason is that the duration of natural immunity is not well established, and there's absolutely documented reinfection. So the thought is the vaccine would help the people prevent reinfection. Another question naturally is who's going to pay for the vaccine? And the vaccine at this point there's no charge to patients. It's a federally funded program. There are some places that down the road may charge an administration fee, but for right now, there's no fee to patients. The other question is, are there other vaccines besides Pfizer and Moderna that are currently available? And the answer is not yet, but I suspect that there will be some vaccines available soon. Another question is, can I get COVID by getting vaccinated? And the answer is, resoundingly, no, you cannot. Unlike some other vaccines, there's no live virus rather, and there's no inactivated virus. It's RNA. It cannot give you COVID. As far as ages, the Pfizer vaccine is approved for 16 and older, but Moderna is for 18 and older. How many doses are needed? So both of these vaccines require 2 doses. It's a little confusing because the Pfizer one requires a second dose at 21 days. The Moderna requires a second dose at 28 days. There's a little bit of flexibility. For the Pfizer vaccine, you can do it within 3 or 4 days on either side. But it is recommended to get a second dose. There is some immunity that develops after the first dose, but it's incomplete. And so both doses are recommended for each of these vaccines. So just to summarize, so right now there are 2 vaccines that have received their emergency use authorization. One is the Pfizer vaccine and the other is Moderna. Both vaccines did complete 3 phases of clinical trials. So tens of thousands of participants were involved in these trials, and both vaccines appeared to be safe and highly effective. Each vaccine can cause mild to moderate initial adverse reactions. And there are some reports with both vaccines of very rare but real episodes where people do have a more severe reaction called anaphylaxis. The CDC and the FDA both have monitoring programs to review safety. So even though the trials are over, there's ongoing monitor to confirm that these are both effective and also safe. New York State has this phased implementation plan, and the idea is to, again, maximize benefits and minimize risk, and to really keep critical medical and social infrastructure intact. There's this real anticipation that if the pandemic continues the way it's going, especially after the winter holidays, January and February may be very difficult times when we want to make sure that we have the hospital workers to take care of people. I do want to emphasize that even though this is a phased implementation and there's a limited amount of vaccine currently available, the goal is to make the vaccine available to all the residents in New York State as quickly as possible. But, to do this right, it's going to take some time. If you're reading the newspapers, I'm going to shift gears again. There's this issue of, in the United Kingdom, there's what people are calling a COVID-19 UK variant. And what we know about this so far is that there's a strain or variant of COVID that was recently, discovered in Britain. It was discovered, just on the December 14th, but they think that when they look back, it's probably present since at least September. There are somewhere between 17 and 20 mutations in this strain. And some of those mutations modify what's called a spike protein. And the spike protein is that most important part of the virus that allows the virus to bind to a cell and become incorporated into a cell and to infect people. It also happens to be the main protein that these vaccines are targeting. One of the concerns, and Boris Johnson has been very public about this, is it's 70% more transmissible compared to the common variant of COVID-19. So the British feel very strongly that this is a main factor in a very rapid increase in cases that they've seen in southeastern England. And there are, however, a number of questions, and probably the most important question in my mind is this going to impact vaccine effectiveness? The preliminary answer is that it's not, but there's a lot of studying going on right now, a lot of research going on to really get a proper answer. And then the other question is this strain more deadly? And again, the preliminary understanding is that it's not more deadly. It's causing more deaths just because it's infecting more people. The bottom line, as far as I'm concerned, is that public health measures remain essential. And there's discussion of travel restrictions, and many countries have implemented travel restrictions right now for the United Kingdom. The US has not. It's part of an ongoing discussion. So to summarize, so there's been a significant increase in cases throughout St. Lawrence County. Local hospitals, clinics, and FQHCs continue to improve access to testing throughout the community. And I would argue that we're actually a model for testing throughout the region. Safe and effective vaccines are being rolled out in this phased program. The goal is to immunize everybody who is eligible and interested. And I really think that vaccines represent a ray of hope. The United Kingdom does have this COVID variant, and it's definitely a cause for concern, but there's much more unknown about this variant compared to what is known right now. The winter holidays, we just need to remember that the role that family gatherings and social gatherings really do play a significant role in fueling this pandemic. Again, it's an important time of the year. People need to connect with one another, but people just need to plan safely. And then finally, public health measures, the 5 pillars of prevention, remain essential, and they really remain the foundation of our response. So that's wearing a mask, physically distancing, washing your hands, staying home if you're sick, and staying local. So I'm happy to answer any questions people might have.
Can you hear me now, Margaret? You're Mrs. Okay.
Mrs. Margaret is here. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. William.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I'm just a regular person, and I'm sitting at home, and I'm not 75, but let's say I'm not 75, but let's say somebody's 75. How do I find out? Who calls me and says, come on down, or it's your turn? How do just the regular people out here find out when they're can come in?
Sure. I mean, I think as the vaccine gets rolled out, there's going to be more and more information. I think the Department of Health is frankly going to be key in communicating because we're in phase 1, which is a fairly limited people. That's why nobody's calling individuals citizens who aren't in these categories. But as we move from phase 1 to phase 2, there's going to be increasing education and notification of individuals who may be eligible for vaccination.
So we would just watch in the press or talk to our own physician.
Yeah, I mean, I think I will say I'm a primary care physician, and we'll be reaching out to, I know people in my practice and telling them that, they're eligible for the vaccine and having them come in for a visit to discuss the pros and cons and then hopefully administer it. So there'll be increasing communication as we move through the phases. And I think as the pharmacies become more involved in, phase 3, 4, and 5, you'll also see advertising from them and communication from them, I would imagine.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Burke.
Dr. Williams, excuse me, the non-clinical people that are being vaccinated, are they individuals that have patient contact? I guess I'm just wondering, as we look at, what's happening in the nursing homes, Again, I'm not sure that it's it's. I wonder if the priorities are right.
Sure. So I think the non-clinical people they're non-clinical people who are in a clinical setting. So in other words, they may mean, we have housekeepers at the hospital whose job is after somebody with COVID leaves, that's the person who goes and cleans that room. So there's an understanding that those people, even though they're not a physician or a nurse, so they're considered non-clinical, they're vital to the operation of a hospital. And likewise, in a nursing home, there are people who, they're not a nurse, they can't, they don't take blood pressures or administer medications, but they're considered essential to the functioning of that environment. And so, sometimes it's a subjective decision on the part of the leader in that organization who meets that criteria. But I can tell you that people are being very, very strict, if you will, and being very thoughtful about it. I think sometimes people say, oh, why did that person get vaccinated? As with so many things, sometimes there's things that other people don't understand, that somebody may play an essential role. And the leader in that organization has decided that that person is playing an essential role to keeping that facility functioning. So they may be non-clinical, but still essential to the functioning of a clinical operation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the explanation.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Denisha.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Williams, in regards to Legislator Hager's question on folks that are older than we are, would it be a safe assumption that, or your recommendation that they should see their primary care physician and ask or let them know that as soon as it were to become available, that they would like to be on the list?
Yeah, I always think it's a good idea to communicate with your primary care physician. I think your primary care physician is in a good position also to understand if you have comorbid illnesses that might make you, even if you're not 65 or 75, at higher risk. So if you look at those phases, comorbid illnesses or illnesses that put people at risk are taken into account. And so, for instance, somebody might go from phase 5 to phase 4 based on information that your primary care doctor would be aware of. So I think it's a good to communicate with them. I don't want to encourage everybody to call their primary care doctor tomorrow, because I can tell you as a primary care doctor that the answer is going to be, we can put you on a list, but it's not ready yet.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have any questions? So I do. We did have an inquiry, Dr. Williams, from somebody whose parents are in the assisted living. And I see from your chart that they would be vaccinations would be in phase 2. Do you have any idea at all, or would it be pure speculation as to when this individual's parents would be getting a vaccination?
So, I would hesitate to give an actual date or specific time frame. What I will say is that I personally and professionally feel very strongly that people who are in assisted livings in an assisted living setting are at high risk and should be prioritized. So just as soon as we have the opportunity to vaccinate them, we will, whether that's done with the pharmacies, who again are working with the nursing homes, or whether that's done through the hospitals. I couldn't tell you for sure right now, but everybody is keen to vaccinate that population just as soon as it's possible.
Well, that was the inquiry, nursing home residents are going to get it. Why not the assisted living? So it would be shortly after, I would assume.
That's right.
Okay. How many vaccinations have you done now? Do you have a number?
So I think in the region we're approaching 1,000.
Excellent. Okay, great. And the Rheonics machines, do you have 6 that are actually functioning now? Have you received all 6?
We have all 6, and they're spinning away as we speak.
Okay, all right.
Spinning meaning running tests.
Yes, I understand.
Hopefully the machines aren't spinning.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you once again for the work that you're doing for us. I don't see any other questions, so we'll move on with our agenda. Thanks, Doctor.
Thank you so much.
Okay, our first resolution is for Highway. It's with Mr. Chambers. That resolution is approving supplemental agreement number 3 with Barton LaJudas DPC for additional construction inspection CI services for St. Lawrence County Bridge Preservation Project. Bins number 3340-850, 3341-310, 3341-710, and 3341-720 with PIN number 775378. It is moved by Mr. Denisha, seconded by Mr. Sheridan and Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Mr. Chambers, if you would, please.
Yes, this is our forest preservation bridge project. Costs are related to that. County Road 17 in DeKalb, 46 in the Messina area, and County Road 3 and 8 in Rossi. Those are where the structures are located. And during this project, our time expended, I guess, is greater than we originally estimated. So we're asking for an additional $15,000 to be added to the contract. This will be all within the funds that were budgeted for this project, and it's 95% funded by state and federal funds.
Any questions for Mr. Chambers concerning this resolution? Seeing none, all those, Mr. Perkins.
I'll be abstaining due to my employment.
So noted. Okay, Kelly, strike Mr. Perkins. Any more discussions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay, our next resolution is approving supplemental agreement number 1 with Barton LaJudas DPC for construction inspection CI services for Depot Street over the Deer River project. PIN number 322-0850, PIN number 775386. Moved by Mr. Forsyth, seconded by Mr. Sheridan. And Ms. Terminelli, did you have your hand up, did you? Were you seconding? Oh, you don't like this? Okay. Oh, Mr. Arquette.
Careful, I didn't say that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Chambers.
Chairman. I wanted to be added as a co-sponsor.
Okay, yes, all right. So Kelly, Mr. Arquette would like to be a co-sponsor. Mr. Chambers, would you like to speak about this?
Yes, thank you. Earlier tonight, you approved the funding for the project in the first instance, and the approval of the contract, signing the contract with Friend Commercial Contracting. And in order to be in compliance with the federal and state regulations, we need to have construction inspection and engineering oversight on the project. We will have our own county employee on site assisting, actually as in charge of the inspection services. But in order to be in compliance, we need additional help through the consultant. So that's why I'm requesting a contract with our design engineer to continue on with the inspection. This will be funded by 80% federal funds, 15% state funds, 5% county, and it is within the amount that you approved earlier.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Chambers? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers. Our next resolution is correcting and refunding erroneous taxes. Moved by Mr. Perkins, seconded by Mr. Forsyth. Mr. Green.
Yes, good evening. This is a yearly resolution before you that allows the real property office and the treasurer's office to correct erroneous errors and tax bills when there is a mistake done on them. In other words, an exemption that wasn't should have been allowed and it wasn't. So that's what happens here. This allows that those to be refunded for the $2,500 and less amounts.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Green concerning this resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Green.
Kevin, if I could add just a little bit more here, just so
Certainly.
yep, just so the legislature is aware, these corrections are on the Google Drive under real property and corrections. Each month we offer these, give these to you so you can see what the previous month's corrections were, so they can be reviewed at that point. And one more thing is, last year there was 31 corrections in 2019, and this year, as of today, there's, with a week to go, there's 31 again this year. So pretty common, pretty routine.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Green.
Thank you.
Next up is our treasurer, Renee Cole. The first resolution is authorization of petty cash accounts and departmental cash drawers. Moved by Mr. Sheridan, second by Mr. Perkins and Ms. Curran. Ms. Renee.
Hello, thank you. So this is one of 3 annual resolutions that we bring you every year. This resolution was updated for the petty cash accounts. One drawer was turned in from community services, so this is $200 less in petty cash. That was the only from last year to this year.
Okay, any questions for our treasurer concerning this resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carried. The next resolution is authorizing blanket bond in lieu of individual sureties for county officials and employees. Moved by Mr. Perkins, second by Mr. Forsyth and Mr. Sheridan and Ms. Curran. Renee?
Okay. As I stated, this is another annual resolution. This one's authorizing the blanket bond in lieu of individual sureties for county officials. There's no changes in any of this from year to year. I think it's been the same for at least 4 years, probably much longer.
Any questions for Renee concerning this resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. The final resolution for the treasurer is bank depositories and investment of county funds policy. Moved by Mr. Denisha, seconded by Ms. Curran and Mr. Forsyth. Renee?
Thank you. This is the last of our annual resolutions. This is our bank depository and investment of county funds policy. There was one change made to this year. It's highlighted right at the very beginning under community bank NA for depository name. We increased the maximum amount for that to $35 million. It was previously, it was $25 million. But with a lot of the changes that we've seen this year, we're putting more money in community bank in order to maximize our interest earnings.
Okay, any questions for Renee? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next up is a 2020 update on the performance of the investments. Renee?
Yes, thank you. And I have on the line with us Alex DeRosa from 3+1, but I'll do a little intro for him while he's getting set up. And Dylan has, I believe, a screen share related to that. So this kind of ties in with the previous resolution for bank depositories and investments. Last year around this time, we added New York Class as a depository, and that was done to allow us some short-term, highly liquid investing, to fill in our gaps between treasury and long-term. It was a very good move, at least until everything changed due to COVID. So with that, treasury rates had dropped drastically, and New York Class, due to its structure, dropped as well, although there was a couple of months run out. As they aged out the better earning portfolio investments that they held, as they aged out and the newer and brought in newer stuff, they were earning less too. So we've had, needless to say, I guess, a big challenge on the investment front. And while we didn't the income that we saw last year, we did our best to meet the challenge head on, to ensure that we're doing everything we can to protect our county dollars and to ensure that our funds are receiving value. We we engaged 3+1 for assistance with liquidity management, and that partnership remains extremely valuable. They continue to be a great source of support and expertise and have assisted us in navigating this new market reality COVID ushered in this spring. Alex has been so kind as to join us tonight via Zoom, and he's prepared a short presentation to update the board on some of the results and continuing work on the county investment earnings front. Thank you, Alex. Turn it over.
Thank you so much, Renee. I think you did a great job of explaining everything that the county has had to work towards to achieve some tremendous results over the past 12 months, and most specifically over the last 8 months, where we've seen some drastic changes. Just to give everyone a quick overview of who 3+1 is, we're a liquidity data company. So we're not a bank. We're not trying to get the county's funds on deposit, and we're not an.
Oh, we lost you.
We
lost you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
There we go. Sorry about that. So we're not a bank. We're not trying to get county funds on deposit with us. We're not an investment provider.
What we do for the county.
Also to identify the value you're receiving on funds. And that's such an important conversation, especially this year, because value is received in many different ways. It's not just through interest earnings like we all see on the county budget. It's also through offsetting banking fees at your banks, because the banks see value in holding your dollars. But with everything that's happened this year and how far interest rates have pulled down, many banks have started charging hard fees. We have many clients in New York State that we work with that are facing tens of thousands of dollars in banking fees this year because of where the environment went. And St. Lawrence County is not going to be in that position because of some of the tremendous work Renee and Deb have been doing by our side, specifically with KeyBank, to maximize the dollars there. And on top of that, not only is the county going to be offsetting banking fees, you're still going to be earning a tremendous level of interest earnings. And changes that Renee alluded to earlier. Since COVID-19, in the news about the stock market, you might remember that there was a big crash back in March and April, but really by the summer, everyone talked about how the stock market was back to normal and rates and net returns in that market were completely fine. That's not the case with bank interest rates. As we know, with this intense amount of stimulus that's been pushed to the capital markets through the federal government, treasury rates, the United States treasuries, those rates have been pushed so low. The main pools over the past 12 months before this, they were treasury rates and that New York class product that Renee mentioned earlier. But if all the stimulus injected into the market, those rates have fallen to near zero levels. So many counties that work, and many entities we work with that weren't looking at new ways to make that revenue, all their go to next to nothing, just like that, because of the amount of stimulus injected into the banking marketplace, where banks just weren't hungry for deposits anymore. So Renee and Deb have been fantastic. One, working with KeyBank to reorganize the fee structure to make sure that St. Lawrence County would be paying no banking. And two, to make some changes to the investment policy to make sure that Renee and Deb have the flexibility to invest dollars with any local community bank or bank that is providing competitive rates in the marketplace. And that's what we've seen change so quickly, just overnight over the past few months. And that's why Renee mentioned the community bank is being because community bank has actually become one of the most competitive, if not the most competitive, banking partner in New York State in the past 8 months. Because of the work that Renee and Deb have been doing to lock in higher interest rates before this happened, the county is 5 times our benchmark rates for what New York State public entities should expect to see. The county's interest earnings are certainly going to be lower this year compared to last year because of the interest rate. But comparatively, when you're looking at the benchmark, the county is doing significantly better than they did last year, because if they hadn't made these moves, they would be earning next to nothing just because of how quickly the market changed. And that's what we try to achieve at 3+1, to make sure that all of our entities have that flexibility to take advantage of new opportunities, like Renee and Deb have been doing at community day, and adjust as the market adjusts, because we see how quickly it can change. So I want to thank Renee and Deb for all the work they've done, and thank you all for the policy change. Our job's a lot easier to make sure that we're maximum value of taxpayer dollars. What we want to achieve everything.
Okay, thank you, Alex. We had difficulty hearing the audio. Renee looks a little stressed, but I think would you like to speak to this at all, Renee?
Sorry about that, Alex. It was kind of in and out a little bit. It was soft. It was kind of quiet. So, and some of the background noise too, just sometimes kind of jams it up. So, and Deb Bridges is on the call as well. She's not highlighted then, but I see that she tuned in case there were questions on it. I think what we wanted to say was, while it wasn't, last year we were able to come in, I think we had $700,000 in earnings, after our first year of it. And, we didn't see that this year, but we out earned, we did better than the first sentence on the presentation, which is also on Google Drive, kind of points out that, 73% of our funds still received above marketplace benchmark rates. So, we've done what we can with what we were given, I guess is kind of how I feel about it. And I know that there's concern, going forward, and I don't know if Alex touched on that, but I don't think that we're expecting to see any big changes, because there's a vaccine out. It's not going to be a quick turnaround. I don't think on this front, it's going to be more of the same.
Exactly. I'm hoping my audio might be a little better right now. I'm sorry, my battery's been going in and out on these, but the power of fixed income, using the data to lock in interest rates, is what's made the difference for St. Lawrence County over this past 12 months and what's going to happen in the next 12 months. Today, right now, the county's still earning rates as high as 0.5 and 0.4% when our benchmark rates are at 0.1, a quarter of that. And Renee and Deb had the confidence to lock in those rates because they know that the county has stable foundation of cash that's available for longer periods of time. And that's sound liquidity management. If Renee and Deb had simply kept all county dollars in liquid accounts where the rate can change overnight, the county's interest earnings this past year would have fallen by a factor of about 75% just from the COVID-19 situation immediately. But by implementing different tools and having fixed income, the counties continue to earn significantly more than our marketplace benchmarks. We can't control the interest rate environment, but we can control locking in rates at higher rate environments. And that's exactly what the county has done.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Debbie Bridges, would you like to add anything at this time?
Yes, I would. Thank you. I just want to accentuate how valuable it is to have the 3+1 team, that they sort information and make it very practical, and have helped us develop a plan that Renee and I can look at, what's coming up, what's happened in the past, and has really allowed us to make some of these moves. So I thank you, Alex, and your team for some great information.
Thank you, Deb. And it's a pleasure working with you all because it makes it, you all make it very easy to take advantage of these opportunities when we identify them. Our recommendations don't fall on deaf ears with St. Lawrence County, and the data shows by the tremendous work that you've all done.
Okay, thank you. Do any of the legislators have any questions for any one of the three here? Mr. Reagan.
Renee, I think everybody on the board is grateful to you for what you've done with this. The one thing that I think we weren't able to discern was how much specifically you were able to generate for the county this year.
I will try to look at that, I guess, on Alex's sheet. Alex, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the TTM, interest on all funds in the center.
Yes, so that refers to the trailing 12 months, which in this case was December of 2019 all the way to the end of November 2020. So it's not a perfect 2020 picture as the year's not done yet, but it is a 12-month picture.
I think Mr. Reagan was looking for a quantity, right?
And the number is?
The number that we have here is $257,000 and a little bit of change. Sorry about that.
I think $250,000, is that correct?
57.
Yes.
$257,000. I think, considering this past year, this is a terrific achievement on the part of you and your department. And I would just like to thank you for doing this. And I think this is a real credit to your administration and something that, you brought to us. And last year, it worked out, extremely well for the county. And I have confidence it'll work out very well in the coming year. So thank you for doing that. I just thought, I think it for our friends in the press, for them to understand the value of this, hearing an actual number is more valuable.
Okay.
Agree. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Debbie and Alex. So we appreciate your information. The batteries work, Alex. So all right.
Thank you, and I apologize for that.
Oh, that's fine. Okay, so we'll move on.
Thank you. Bye.
Renee, you have something else, or we're all
Nope,
set?
I'm all set. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alex and Deb.
Thank you. Okay. So our next resolution is from the Workforce Development Board with Barb Lashwa. And the resolution is modifying the 2020 WIOA budget for temporary assistance for needy families. Moved by Mr. Perkins, second by Mr. Sheridan and Ms. Curran. Ms. Lashwa.
Good evening, all. Hope you're well. This resolution is a direct result from our summer youth employment program. We received our funding in July, actually July 9th. We usually receive it around May 1st. So we really had a short period of time to spend this money for our summer youth. We were directly impacted by COVID. We had a reduction in work sites as well as participants. So that caused a problem for us. And we also hired a payroll service to help try to mitigate some potential for liability on the county's part if any of our summer youth were to contract COVID, which none of them did, thank you. So basically, we spent $266,818, but it looks like we were unable to spend $122,169, which will have to be relinquished back to the Office of Temporary Disability Assistance.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Lashwa? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Our next, okay, thank you, Barb. Our next resolution, Legislator Lightfoot, would you introduce that, please?
I'd love to, but I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, so Mr. Forsyth.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to offer a resolution committing to honoring the current distribution formula of sales and compensating use tax to the towns and villages in St. Lawrence County. I move for its adoption.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Denisha, Mr. Sheridan, Ms. Curran, Ms. Terminelli, Mr. Burke, Ms. Fiacco, Mr. Lightfoot. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So, Mr. Lightfoot, would you like to speak to the resolution?
Well, I don't have it in front of me right now. I'd prefer not to speak on it right now without seeing it.
Okay. All right. Mr. Forsyth.
Mr. Chair, I wholeheartedly support this. This whole sales tax negotiation has kind of been a nightmare since day one. but I think this will put the towns and villages at ease for one. The only thing, I realize the legislator can bring forward a resolution at any time. The only thing I wish would have happened with this resolution is it had gone through the committee and me as the committee chair. I was made aware of it the day it came onto the agenda, but I support it wholeheartedly. So procedurally, not in love with it, but.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Forsyth. Would anyone else like to comment? So, Mr. Burke.
Wholeheartedly agree with Dave. It's much needed, and I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor if I could.
Certainly. Mr. Denisha.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm in full support of this resolution. I think it's long overdue. And I know you've all heard me speak of how important sales tax revenue is to towns. And as I speak to that from experience, and this will, I think it will lend a lot of uncertainty. It will remove a lot of uncertainty from the town supervisors, and I think it's good.
Thank you, Mr. Denisha. Ms. Curran.
I had asked before to be added as a co-sponsor. I just wanted to make sure that was captured.
That will be applied. Ms. Terminelli.
I just have a follow-up question, and it has to do with what Dave said about a resolution being able to be overturned by any group of legislators. So we know that this resolution would sit for the next 2 years for sure. Is there any way to protect it for 10 years? I guess, could we ask the attorney, our county attorney, to weigh in on that, to make this a 10-year that can't be overturned, just so that the villages and the towns can proceed in planning their budgets for years to come, as opposed to just a year or two at a time?
So I will let the county attorney weigh in on that, but I think if you read in the body of language, it takes it to 2030. But Mr. Button, if you would, please.
I'd be more than happy to. Good evening, everyone. It's actually quite simple. The resolution speaks to essentially the distribution that's established in tax law section 1252C, which in a review of our current agreement that was originally struck back in 2010, that's the distribution model that we currently use with the towns and villages. So your question, legislator Terminelli, was how can we make this permanent through 2030? And the most obvious answer to that would be that we include a provision within the agreement that indicates that regardless of whether or not the city preempts as of 2023, that the provision related to the distribution from the towns and villages will continue through to 2030. Past that point, we obviously have the distribution of 1262C, but up until 2030, we can put a specific provision, which if you'll take a look at the further resolved, that any agreement that is able to be reached for the period ending November 30th, 2030 with the city of Ogdensburg shall include provision for the towns for distribution to the towns in the same manner and utilizing the same percentages as are currently operative for the distribution of the sales and costs and use. So my intention, assuming the board passes the resolution correctly, is to draft an extension / modified agreement that would continue to keep the towns as they are under the current agreement.
Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in agreement with the resolution as well. I think it's needed. But Steve, can you clarify with a yes or no? Can a board in 2 years, 3 years come in and change this at their will?
No.
With the majority? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Arquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor. Secondly, I want the general public to know that throughout this negotiation and from the onset, the one thing that was agreed upon by 15 legislators, some of them not here now, and new ones that are here now that weren't there then. But the one thing that was agreed upon unanimously was that the towns and villages would not be held in harm's way throughout this negotiation. So I think that's an important piece that got clouded in some of the negotiations through the media. But then this is more of a procedural question, and to our county attorney, if I could. I don't have my Robert's rules in front of me, but am I incorrect in saying that any resolution that is passed by this Board of Legislators can be reintroduced by someone from the winning side of the vote when the resolution was passed?
Are you asking the question as to whether or not subsequent to passage of this resolution, one of the winning members could actually vote to reconsider the issue? I believe the question is related to a motion to reconsider.
To reconsider, that's what anybody from the winning side of the vote could re-raise the resolution for reconsideration.
Procedurally, that's correct.
Thank you.
Mrs. Haggard.
I'm having a moment where I can't remember my question, but I will get back to you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize.
It comes around, Margaret. It doesn't, it comes around.
This would be ample opportunity for Mrs. Fiacco to weigh in. Ms. Fiacco, would you like to say a comment or two?
I support this resolution.
Okay. Mr. Sheridan.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I've been telling my boards and people who have talked to me for the last year that we were going to make sure that we were looking out for them and making sure that a resolution like this would come forward. I just wish it could have come forward a lot sooner. We made it easier on a lot of us, including the towns, and when they're working on their budgets, it's going to make it a lot more clear for them and clear up any uncertainty when they're working on their budgets. So I would support it, and I also would ask to be also named as a co-sponsor.
Okay, certainly. Mr. Arquette? Actually, Mrs. Go ahead, Tony. You're on. It's Mrs. Haggard's coming around, but
I'll be very brief. I just want to warn you that if you keep poking Miss Fiacco, you may find yourself out on the ice rink with her, and that may not be pleasant for you. So
she's going to drop the gloves with me, isn't she? I know she's shy. I'm just trying to involve her. Mrs. Haggard.
Okay, I am back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is very, very important to me. I appreciate Legislator Lightfoot bringing it forward because in an effort to work across the aisle, this was continuously one of my concerns for my dear village of Potsdam, which I believe we should not in any way lose out. And of course, I'm always fighting for more. So I appreciate this. And to Mr. Button, this will have to go through state approval of some sort. Could you address that from my knowledge, please? Thank you.
I certainly can. Both under 1210 and 1262A of the tax law, any agreement for the distribution of sales tax is required to go through the comptroller's office. Now, the county has no legal obligation to negotiate with towns and villages, but we have historically included in towns and villages and distribution for the towns and villages as a part of our negotiated agreement with the city. As we are at this juncture considering, or will be contemplating this evening, an extension and potential of that agreement through to 2030. If we adopt an additional 9-year agreement, even if we adopt an additional 2-year agreement, we have the ability to embed within that agreement the additional responsibility for distribution to the towns and villages, just as we did in 2010. So once that agreement is prepared, associated with the city, we can send that up. Now, Ms. Terminelli asked a question earlier whether or not we could pass a resolution and bind a successive board to continue this on. And I really didn't get into the legality of it, but I can explain very clearly. This board has always had within its legal authority the ability to decide whether or not to distribute that money pursuant to 1260. So yes, this board can pass a resolution that distributes it. That resolution, if it was solely with the towns and villages, would not be subject to comptroller review. But because it is a part of a negotiation with a city under 1262A and 1210, it all of a sudden becomes a part of comptroller review. So yes, comptroller review will occur with a city-county agreement that incorporates provision related to the towns and villages.
Mr. Lightfoot.
I just like to add to that the fact that these are two separate resolutions, separate and distinct from each other. And that it is a result of a lot of hard work, as you all know. It's really, and I have it in front of me now, so I'm a little more comfortable speaking about some of the issues in it. This all started, if you recall, back a few months ago when the county, not much different from where we are now, was looking at ways to generate additional revenue to cover the costs that we saw would be forthcoming when the state decides to fund their programs with our money. That's been proven to have already happened with respect to the unfunded mandate of covering costs for financially strapped nursing homes and hospitals. And if any of us are, interested in what is going on in the financial world today, you can see that we're in nothing but a big mess. I got to say, too, that we're able to do this and we are able to put together a resolution like this, continuing the generosity of the county, if you will, and it is a generous offering, particularly in light of the fact that we exceed what the statewide average is by fully 50%. That being said, the sales tax revenues and the care that this board, previous boards, the county treasurer, the county administrator, and the county attorney have been very prudent and have just strenuously defended the budget process to the point where, aren't we lucky we have a few bucks in the fund balance in order to be able to do this without a huge amount of strain on our budget. I think it's a great thing for the board to be able to do this and not have to harm anybody and still be able to keep our heads above water and to be able to do things like this and other things to ensure not only our financial stability, but the financial stability of the towns and villages also. But please remember, these are two separate resolutions dealing with two different things. And I congratulate the board for being unanimous in passing this. That's the way I think it's going to go anyway. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lightfoot. Anyone else? I'll be supporting this resolution. The trouble with this negotiations is that a wedge is being developed between us, between the city, between the towns. And by taking the towns and the villages out of the equation and assuring them peace and tranquility and security in their budgeting process, that this formula won't change, will allow us to isolate the problems and actually negotiate with this city head on. So I'll be supporting that. So let's move on to a vote. All those in favor of the resolution, we can do a roll call. Certainly. Ms. Kelly?
Just a minute, please. Terminelli?
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsyth,
Yes.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Smithers,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
Yes.
Haggard,
Yes.
Piacco,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Arquette,
Yes.
15 yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Next up is our county administrator's report, and the first resolution is adoption of the rules of procedure. Moved by Mr. Denisha, second by Mr. Perkins. Mrs. Doyle?
This resolution was forwarded out to legislators to give you an opportunity to review carefully. I will go over the changes that we've made, which are bolded in your agenda. And then if there's anyone who has input or any discussion about additional changes, you can certainly discuss those at that time. So there are 7 indicated changes marked in bold, as well as the tentative schedule for 2021. I'll walk through those quickly. In Article 5, letters A and B have been updated to include our current practice. As you know, we've had to modify a few things relative to our meeting structure at this time. It is intended that this will continue into 2021, so that provides an opportunity for that to be captured for 2021. In Article 6, letter B, the word resolution was changed out, formatted exclusively. In Article 7, letters B, I, J, and K6 changes were made, and those also are formative clarifications that were made. If there's any questions about those, I'm happy to answer them. Also, the schedule was prepared as was prepared this year. So we have, as normally, we have doubled committees in months where there are holidays, as you would expect when there are only 3 Mondays. In the summer, we have also continued to combine operations and services. And as a reminder, we take the opportunity to switch which meeting goes first, so as to not delay the same committee each month from its start. So those are the tentative dates of submissions for resolutions, pre-committee dates, which happen 5 days prior to the committee meeting, and the committee dates tentatively, as well as all of the marked dates that are open. We have captured also the tentative date for the 2022 budget presentation, the longevity ceremony, as well as the memorial that takes place annually. Are there any questions or other suggestions for changes to the rules of procedure?
Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next resolution is amending resolution number 27-2020 for the newspaper designation rotation schedule. Moved by Mr. Perkins, second by Mr. Forsyth. Ms. Doyle.
So you would only see this resolution typically on a 5 or 10-year basis. However, last year, there was a concern raised about the status with which North Country This Week held in regard to being considered an official newspaper. They have now, and they were removed, my apologies, they have been removed at the beginning of 2020 from the schedule and a new schedule adopted. With the changes that North Country This Week has made, now providing a subscription opportunity, they can now be added to the schedule. And as you'll see, they've been added in year 2024. So this also provides for you the intended newspapers for the next resolution for 2021, as well as adapts the schedule to include North Country This Week.
Any questions concerning this resolution? Mr. Reagan.
I'm not sure whether, I'm just wondering why would North Country This Week begin in 2024 while a company that owns 2 newspapers would be designated for next year?
You're referring to the Watertown Daily Times?
Well, the the following resolution has both.
Oh, the Courier Observer.
The Courier Observer and the Watertown Times, for next year. And, it would just seem to me that, since it's going to the same company, that in order to be fair, that the rotation taken, be done fairly.
So, Mr. Reagan, would you like to make an amendment to the schedule? And what would your amendment be?
I'll leave it to the county administrator to, do the appropriate wording.
What is your intention, though? Where would you like what move to where?
I think that, we're talking about, 3 different companies, the Tribune Press, North Country This Week, and, the, Johnson newspapers, and I think, they should all be treated equally.
I can speak to that.
Yes, thank you.
So in that way, the amendment could change the 2021 concurrent resolutions, election notices, and official canvass to be North Country This Week. And North Country This Week taking its place, the Courier Observer could take the place in 2024. They could switch rotations.
So the amendment is, if you look at your sheets, it would be moving from 2021, you would move the Courier Observer and replace that with North Country This Week. And the 2024 would become the Courier Observer. Is there a second to that? Seconded by Mr. Forsyth. Any discussion about the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So as to, does anyone want to speak to the amended resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amended resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay.
That will require an amendment on the next resolution as well, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So the next resolution is the newspaper designation. Moved by Mr. Forsyth, seconded by Mr. Reagan. And discussion?
Motion to amend would be appropriate so that it matches.
Okay. Okay. Motion to amend it so that North Country This Week would be first up. Mr. Reagan, second by Mr. Perkins. So as to the amendment, which replaces Courier Observer with North Country This Week, any questions or discussion about that? All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carried. To the amended resolution, any discussion about that? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amended resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Our next resolution is authorizing the chair to sign contracts. Moved by Mr. Forsyth, second by Mr. Denisha and Mr. Reagan. Mrs. Doyle.
This resolution provides the opportunity for existing contracts in place, the authorization to make those appropriations without passing an individual resolution per contract. So the amounts in some situations are rate scheduled. That would be on the original resolution that you adopted. And the other will be allowing the opportunity after January 4th for the departments, respective departments, to make those payments according to the contracts.
Any questions for Mrs. Doyle concerning this resolution? Mrs. Terminelli.
I don't know if it's for Mrs. Doyle or for Mr. Button. One of the listed organizations on here is school districts in general. As an employee of a school district, should I be abstaining from this?
Mr. Button, are you there?
No.
Go ahead, Mr. Button.
Would you like me to ask that again? I'm sorry. Okay, sure thing.
Yeah.
No worries. So in the organizations listed, it's school districts in general. As an employee of a school district, would I need to abstain from a resolution like this?
No, these are rate scheduled contracts that are annual renewals. Unless you're telling me you have the ability to affect the rates or affect the negotiations associated with those contracts by your employer at the school district, I would say that you're fine going ahead and going.
Okay, any other questions? All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. The next one is the resolution that was tabled in January, and that's authorization to request a dog quarantine. Is there any interest in removing this from the table? Seeing done, we'll move on to vacancy.
I do have a few items for my report.
Okay.
If I could.
Mrs. Doyle?
Related to COVID-19, as you heard this evening from Dr. Williams, the cases continue to rise. We have a new high for our 7-day rolling average. This week, as we've been emphasizing one of the 5 pillars over the last 5 weeks, we are at the 5th pillar. And as also Dr. Williams referenced, physical distancing rather than social distancing, but trying to make sure that we're celebrating safely over the coming weeks. We have had additional staff test positive in 3 departments in the county. Precautions are being taken, cleaning, and you may have seen this morning in my communication with regard to departments that will be working remotely until Monday, December 28th. All services remain available to the public. Please make a phone call or send an email. Certainly the board office is happy to help direct folks. Also want to remind folks to stay home following a test. That's a very important component, at least until results are provided, which may or may not release someone from isolation or quarantine, but is very important in the potential exposure should a positive occur. On an update also with regard to the Rheonics machines, we heard an update on Friday that we should be prepared for early January delivery. So we'll follow up and make sure as soon as we can that we get those machines delivered. We'll be working to provide education, and as Dr. Williams mentioned in his slides as well, to raise awareness relative to the vaccine. As well, the reopening task force convened last week and had that very discussion. Talking more with businesses, the reopening task force has been a great conduit to get information out, as well as answer questions and direct folks to the right places. Last week, OASIS conducted a virtual site review, which is a little bit unusual. Typically, OASIS, when they come here to do a site review. Last year, you'll recall, they reviewed Ogdensburg and Messina as a satellite of the Ogdensburg Clinic for recertification. That has concluded. I sat in on the exit interview on Friday. They conducted for the Canton Chemical Dependency Clinic as well as the satellite in Gouverneur, and that review went well. The county offices this week on Thursday and Friday will be closed for the holiday. The 24/7, 365 folks that keep us in business and make sure we're taking care of folks will continue operating. Some of the COVID work will occur on Thursday morning, but the expectation is that there will not be an update on Christmas Day. We'll catch up the day after, as well as on New Year's Day. Lastly, I wanted to let you know that the tax warrants are being prepared at this time. I know some of you get questions from your towns and villages. These will be signed. We're making arrangements with Chair Lightfoot to have those signed, and we'll get those turned around in the next couple of days. Also, just wanted to thank the board for authorizing the certificate to be presented to Doug White tomorrow on his 100th birthday. That's all I have, unless there's questions.
Mr. Forsyth.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ruth, is there any flexibility of the Rheonic machine? I know we designated one for Hepburn and one for St. Lawrence Health Systems. It sounds like they've got 6. I don't know if they have them spread out, but if there was a case where, say, Ogdensburg needed 2, is there flexibility in this, or how does that work?
We can certainly have the conversation. And I think that Dr. Williams has raised that as a concern, but I think also from the county's perspective of being fair to both hospital systems, that was the interest.
Yeah.
And so we certainly can talk about that.
And they do have the 2 nursing homes. They have the St. Joe's. So.
They do.
Thank you.
You bet.
Mr. Arquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, Ruth, I know I was the one that that asked for the weekend reports when they stopped, and like a great leader, you took that upon your own shoulders to do so, knowing that the public health department are overloaded. I just want you to know that I get a lot of information or feedback that it's greatly appreciated that you do that on the weekends. The last thing I wanted to do was put more on your plate, but again, it's very much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Okay. So next up is our vacancy. And the first request is to fill a motor equipment mechanic helper. Mr. Chambers, are you with us?
Yes, thank you. Yes, motor equipment mechanic helper position was just vacated on the 12th of December. This individual took employment with another municipality. The motor equipment mechanic helper does a variety of work tasks at the department, including being on a snowplow detail.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Chambers from the legislative body? Okay, Mrs. Haggard.
Thank you.
I did have a question for Mr. Chambers. Is that a position that's hard to fill?
It is rather hard to fill. Mechanics in general are hard to fill. So usually we only have a few applications. So a very slim market.
And it would be prohibited, or I mean competitive, because they're getting paid by somebody else better than they're being paid by us? Is that why the turnover happens?
There was a considerable difference between the pay that the county was paying and what the individual is now receiving at another municipality. So,
thank you,
yes.
sir. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Next up, for the One Stop Career Center, we have the request is for filling a keyboard specialist. Barb?
Hello again. The keyboard specialist is there as our front line to work with customers. They take incoming call, direct call. They schedule classroom, group rooms. They help with resumes and the like. Quite often, they will steer our customers to the appropriate partner staff. And the person that has left the position took another position in the county. It was a step up for them. And also really we've missed Rebecca's participation in social media for us. So that has been a great loss. So we're looking to fill that position.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Lajoie on this position? Okay, we'll move on to the next one. The next request is for filling a principal account clerk.
Yes, we are really down as far as manpower at the One Stop. The principal account clerk position not only helps us follow the rules and regulations, ensures compliance with applications of federal, state, and local laws, rules and regulations, but also was starting to do a little bit of program oversight for us, monitoring of participant files to make sure that we're in compliance. Right now, our fiscal person has absolutely no backup. So if Penny is not with us, there basically is no one in the fiscal chair. So this is really a vital spot to be filled.
Any questions from the legislative body for Ms. Lajoie? Okay, looks like we're good to go.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Doyle? Yes. Okay.
Thanks, Barb. Before you move on to committee reports.
Thank you.
The board, thanks, Barb. The board was very gracious in granting me some latitude during COVID-19 response, as well as adopting recommendations last year related to the highway department and the succession. As you're all familiar with in CSEA, highway has a unique structure in the way that they fill positions. So the board authorized me to assist Don in filling positions from the first vacancy all the way down through to the entry level, and then the entry level position comes back before you. I wanted to give you an update briefly on what that looks like for this year. So far, there are 40 positions that have been filled this way in 7 departments. And just quickly, I'll go through in social services, that's provided the opportunity, inclusive of the HEAP staff, for 16 positions, 1 in the Board of Legislators office, 6 in highway, 10 in public health, 5 in the Office for the Aging, 1 in the Sheriff's Office, and 1 in community services. So I just wanted to thank you. I think that the autonomy to work with departments, the ability I have to look at those positions, I'm probably tougher on them than most, to be able to make sure that it's merited and that they can move those along without waiting the meeting schedule has been tremendously helpful, not only during COVID, but also in periods where probationary, many of you may recall years ago, we talked about the importance of members not keeping a lower or less functioning person because they were fearful they wouldn't get the position refilled. That, I think, has gone away because when they take action in a probationary situation, they're able to come and go ahead and move it through because likely they've had an interview pool through the civil service process, they've identified a pool of candidates, and they're able to leave that seat vacant for as few days as possible. So I just want to thank you for that and take any questions you may have on vacancies filled that way.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? Seems rather efficient.
I think so.
Okay. So we'll move on to committee reports. First up, Mr. Denisha with Cornell Cooperative Extension Board.
Mr. Chairman. We had our last meeting on Tuesday, December 8th, via Zoom. Nice when we get back to doing it in person. We reviewed the tentative 2021 operating budget. It's going to be just about $2.3 million. And but the board, as I said before, the board appreciates the continued support of the County Board of Legislators. One of the big things that we discussed is the 4-H camp overlay. As you know, we were not able to run camp this year. So if the same thing happens again in 2021, it's going to put Camp Overlook in a very vulnerable position. I do have a letter that I don't have with me, but I would like to forward it to the board in regards to some support that we will be seeking for camping for 2021. Obviously, it's going to be dependent upon the COVID situation, but I think there's things that we might be able to do to provide the camping experience and keep Camp Overlook operating.
Do you know the loss of revenue, what the amount is, or the operation and?
I do, but I don't have it.
Okay,
It's significant.
Right, it's where I met my wife. It's a special place.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Denisha. Fish and Wildlife Management Board, Region 6, Ms. Curran.
We've had no additional meetings since the last time.
Thank you, Ms. Curran. Fisheries Advisory Board, Ms. Terminelli.
No meetings, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Governor Fair Board, Mr. Smithers.
They have not had a meeting. Won't till February.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smithers. Highway and Solid Waste Committee, Mr. Sheridan.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the Highway Committee members will be having a workshop meeting with Don Chambers and Ruth Doyle on January 7th at 11 a.m. And we're there to discuss the highway's outpost storage facilities. And the meeting will be held by way of Zoom. And there will be an invite sent out to the members. Reminder.
Okay. Do you know if other legislators be invited or will be open or?
We can send that out to all the legislators if you want. We'll do that.
I would be interested. I mean, we don't have to participate, but I'd like to listen in.
We can do that. That sounds great. Let's do that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sheridan. Next up, the IDA, Mr. Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The IDA met. We received a report from our Chief Executive Officer. As many of you may remember, several months ago, the IDA offered to all of the companies that have loans out through the IDA and its other various subsidiaries the opportunity to have a moratorium on payments because of the difficulties many of those companies were facing during the height of COVID. I'm pleased to state that all the companies in the county except for one, have resumed making their payments and are paying regularly. And there's over 100 companies in the county that have loans out through the IDA and its various subsidiaries. The other piece of good news is the IDA signed a contract with Michaels Incorporated, which is going to rent or lease the half of the IDA building, which currently has been vacant. And so that should help in terms of providing revenues. The company is involved in the current Smart Path project with the New York Power Authority. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Reagan. Next up, Recreational Trails Advisory Board, Mr. Arquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The volunteer groups have worked diligently to prepare the trail system for snowfall and grooming. So right now, there's been no meetings, but we're doing the snow dance. Thank you.
Right.
Can you show us, on Zoom, the steps so that maybe we could help you out?
I don't believe there's a single person that would want to witness that. I really don't think that.
Okay, just trying to help you out. Okay, thank you, Mr. Arquette. St. Lawrence River Valley redevelopment, Mr. Forsyth.
We have not met in several months, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Forsyth. St. Lawrence County Chamber of Commerce, Mrs. Haggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did meet on December 9th. We had a presentation from the Height Performance Group, Kathy Height, and she gave a presentation about the integration of the different chambers coming together in one chamber, which was very interesting, and that looks like it's moving along. Brooke Rouse talked about some of the upcoming stuff. Try to buy local. All you late shoppers out there, we have plenty of nice stores in St. Lawrence County where you can go and buy your last minute gifts, especially you guys. I know you all wait till the last minute. I believe they're working very hard. This has obviously been a very difficult time for the chamber. We will meet again on Thursday, February 11th. And I wasn't trying to be a sexist about you being late shoppers. Okay.
It's already been filed with the county attorney, the grievance.
Okay,
so.
there you go.
But you're correct. Okay, thank you. Soil and water, John, Mr. Burke, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We haven't, there is no meeting in December, so there's nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so our next resolution, I urge everyone to be calm and rational. It's a very emotional issue. And there's been changes on both sides going back each direction. It has severe implications for all of us here in the future. And without further ado, I'm going to move forward with the resolution. The resolution is approving a tentative agreement between the County of St. Lawrence and the City of Ogdensburg in relation to the allocation and distribution of money collected from the sales and compensating use taxes imposed pursuant to Articles 28 and 29 of the tax law for the term December 1st, 2021 through November 30th of 2030. Moved by Mr. Denisha, seconded by Mr. Forsyth, Ms. Curran, and Mr. Reagan. Okay, Mr. Forsyth, as sales tax chairman, you're up.
Mr. Chair. I'm going to go play by play. I'm going to read through play by play. It's going to take me a couple seconds, but I just want to go through the process of this whole negotiation. The original committee meeting that we held as a board, the intent of that original committee meeting was to increase revenue to the county for unforeseen state mandates that were going to be pushed down on the county, which we get almost monthly. At the original meeting, we were showed that we share 43% of all the sales tax with our towns, villages, and the city of Augsburg. And this was highlighted as one of the highest percentages in the state. The average, I believe, is 30%. So I think Watertown or Jefferson County had almost 50%, but we were one of the highest shares of sales tax. While reviewing the original 2013 increased sales tax extender, that's when we took the additional 1%, generated about $15 million for this county. It was glaring to see the county received 83%, the city still maintained their 6.4%, but the towns and villages only got 10%. And that stuck out to our committee as a whole. And that was the driver of the first discussions. But we have to keep in mind, in the city of Augsburg, there's not one county road, there's not a bridge, and they also make their school districts whole to the tune of, the last couple of years, a little over $600,000 for their unpaid taxes, where we make all the other school districts in the county whole. As a committee, as a board, there's never been a discussion to reduce the sales tax to the original 7%. What I found over the last 10 years of being on this board and watching county government, state government, is that once a revenue stream is developed and depended on, it will more than likely never go away. And I reiterate, depended on. But it may increase at some time. There may be an increase to it. Once you get it through the door, then it's more than likely somewhere down the road it'll increase. Since this original meeting started, I, for one, have not had one supervisor, mayor, elected official, or even a citizen for that matter, say to cut the city of Augsburg sales tax percentage. Not one. The main things I hear, especially at my town board of Lisbon and many other places, is just leave it alone, leave it as is. And I remember Mr. Reagan early on made a statement, this is Pandora's box. Once you open this, Pandora's box is open. Okay, this is the most decisive action this board is going to take, and divisive for this board. More so than community service argument, this is going to divide the county when it's all said and done. If it goes in a negative way. The only people that want to change the formula sit on this board. Not one person on this board, excluding maybe Mr. Fay, including myself as one of the people on this board, has the retail or financial experience to come up with what the city actually generates in sales tax. Sales tax within its boundaries are the retail end. When they buy their cars, their boats, their recreational vehicles, anything that can be registered, whether they buy it in Watertown or they buy it in Potsdam, reverts back to the city. And they get to keep 1/2 of that percentage. So if it's 3%, they get 1.5%, and the additional 1, they get another 0.5%. The common theme is we just don't know. That's the egg on the wall. We don't know what the city generates. When discussion started, I was accused last week, a couple weeks ago, I call him legislator, no, I won't do it. Tony, the TV tough guy, Arquette, made a statement that I've been weak during these negotiations, and crooked. I think I was as tough, and Mr. Scamparelli's here, and I think the members of this committee will agree, I was probably the toughest on the city of Augsburg during the negotiation, from day one. I wanted to know where the additional 1% or $1 million roughly had gone. And I didn't want to know it, I wanted to be able to explain it to the 15 members of this board. Because I knew in the end, this is going to be divisive. And all along I said, you're going to need 8 votes. It's not, and Harry, Mr. Smithers brought up last week, a great point. Yeah, I'd love to see Republicans and Democrats come together for a consensus on this vote. Harry, I hope so too, but I'm realistic on the other hand. It's gonna be 8 votes, and I'll take 12. Never once on the original committee, on the old council, did they offer anything. Rick Perkins brought it up several times. There was never a counter offer. I said the 1%'s glowing, it sticks out, you gotta explain it. And on we went. Now comes the new mayor. To say Mayor Kelly definitely livened up the sales tax meeting would be an understatement. His unorthodox style and take the negotiations to the press caused major animosity in this committee as well as this board. But to his credit and the new city manager's credit, they put an offer out there. They started negotiating. The original offer was to increase them to 7%. The towns and villages share the 43%, split it 50-50, and was met with deaf ears, including mine, because the original committee was intended to generate more revenue for the county. Since that time, there's been back and forth, and now it's become personalities. And when personalities come into a negotiation, the citizens are the ones that take the blunt, in my opinion. We're not looking out for the residents, we're making decisions based on personalities. And believe me, we've all been bothered along the way on this. There's a resolution tonight that if the city agrees, we change the distribution formula from the 0.5% of sales tax that they generate to either go by our formula for towns and villages of population and assessed value, or they can go back to the way they used to do it. Back in 1999, they used to collect their own, and they can preempt. If they go with the population and assessed value, notwithstanding the next census, because I don't know what those numbers are, but as it was drawn up, it's roughly $1.8 million in revenue. $1.8 million the city would lose if they go along with this plan and don't preempt. Some votes have been discussed that we do it over time, others that we do it day one. If they were to go that route, I estimate that's 20 plus jobs lost in the city of Ogdenburg. The city itself, the city's in trouble. There's no ands, if, or buts. The council, managers, or the council, the mayor, and the manager are privy to what these discussions have been. They're not blowing smoke when they say they're going to be losing substantially. The city is divided also. They're divided with their council, and they're divided with their public safety. And I understand it. I get it. Believe me, I get it. But by the county passing this resolution, make no mistake, the city of Ogdensburg will be changed forever. The police and fire that are rejecting the city council, and councilors as well, to me, they're arguing with the wrong people. They should be on these county courthouse steps by the hundreds, screaming at the top of their lungs to every one of us and making our phones ring off the hook. The same as the supervisors, the mayors, the board members, leave this alone. Will we listen? I don't know. When they talk boycotting Ogdensburg businesses, they're boycotting the wrong businesses. They're going to need every dollar they can get generated if they preempt. So here we are voting on a resolution that'll have long-term consequences to the city of Ogdensburg and them alone. We just passed a resolution where the towns and villages were left alone. The city of Ogdensburg is going to take the blunt of our force. And what does this do for us? We're generating more revenue, as originally discussed by this committee, based solely on cutting the city of Ogdensburg and them alone. This committee, there's not one of us that hasn't changed our mind, right or wrong, up or down. Even legislator Reagan, who was the staunchest, firmest, solidest has moved the bed. And do I like this resolution as presented? No, I don't. Some will argue tonight, they got no skin in the game, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Others will say they've been making out pretty well for the last several years. Some will say they spend too much in public safety, police and fire, as opposed to neighboring cities of the same size. Others will say wait for the census. Others will say I don't want to see the city go bankrupt, I don't want to see them hurt. I think they get too much, others will say. I think they get too much. Remember, we don't know what the city generates. And for most of those arguments, I don't have any defense. Nobody knows what the city generates. But I can argue, 20 years ago, the county came to the city. The city didn't go to the county. The county came to the city of Orangeburg and asked them to support the concept of a change in distribution formula, which was based on population to population and assessed value, so that the little towns, Fine, Star Lake, Rossy, got a more fair distribution. The city didn't have any skin in the game, but the city went along with it. And back then it was easy. They collected their own sales tax. They knew what that percentage was. They didn't ask for more or less. They said, we generate roughly 13%, worked out to the 6.43, and that's where the formula was derived. The county went to the city and asked them to change the formula for the benefit of everyone in this county. 10 years later, came up for renewal again, 2010, divisive, and it passed. And they left it the same again. They left it the same again. 2013, 3 years later, we were broke again. I was part of the original one, 2010. 2007, 2010, I was here and I watched it go. So we're broke. Where do we go? We go to the city and the towns and the villages. Senator Ritchie carried the ball on this, but she wanted everyone on board. City didn't have to agree to it. The towns and villages didn't have to agree to it, but they all did for the good of the county, this county. 8 years later, the county is now financially positioned much better off than it was. Now, the towns and villages are secure because we just made them whole. The city's a whole different story. The finance chair sits here tonight, and he agreed originally to extend an offer. And now he's had to change your heart, and I get that. I understand all this. He outlines a whole new concept, much like Robin Hood. There's an email floating around. If we do it from day one, we can take from the rich Ogdensburg, there were 1.8 million from day one, distribute it with the towns and villages, they'll all make more money in the name of being fair. Keep in mind the finance chair is a retired dairy farmer, and I'm also a farmer. Ag is the largest industry in this county. Most farms fall under sales tax exemption. I've been able to take advantage of it too for the last 20 years. Most farms fall under sales tax exemption, myself. Many farms purchase land for crops, as much as $2,500, $3,000, $3,500 an acre, but they're assessed, as per Bruce Green today, at $500 an acre. So if that's no skin in the game, I get it. But we all live in this county together, and this is going to be a divisive issue. I'm not advocating to do away with farm exemption. I'm not advocating to increase assessed value, but in the idea of fairness, should the discussion take place. Perhaps the chair, or the finance chair, could make a counter offer. Out of the last 1% sales tax extender, change the distribution formula from 83% share, which also Blair's. We keep 83% of that addition. It's 12 million bucks. What if we left the city at 6.4%, 68% to the county, 25% to the towns and villages? Here's your 1.8 million bucks out of our money. What I found with government, it's always easy to spend someone else's money. I'm talking out of our money. I talked to Ruth about it at the last committee meeting. I reached around, asked. She said, it's manageable, we could do it, but it's never been an offer on the table. When the Bridge and Port Authority expanded the airport, the city of Ironburg ran water and sewer. It didn't happen. It's outside. I believe the airport's outside. They ran water and sewer. That provides an economic benefit to everyone in this county. When they needed security, they reached out to the Ironburg City Police, and they agreed to provide security. And the Bridge and Port struggles, we all know that. They've been struggling for years. Sometimes they didn't pay their bills for 60, 90 days, whatever. Bridge and Port came to the county, asked if we would take over security at the airport as a county in whole. The answer was no way. So there the city still sits providing security to the airport. The city's now building a water and sewer project. Littleton's home will be Circle Cheese. Through a study and grant funding, they're going to run their water and sewer. They extended it. They're going to be extending it for the village of Hewlett. Now the town of Lisbon's also looking at the feasibility of doing the same for the county's benefit. To me, the city's been as good a neighbor as you can ask for. I ran into a former city councilor the other night. He said, good luck with it. Good luck with these sales tax. People of the other areas hate Ironburg. And I can't believe it. I don't believe it. But I can understand the impression. And if we make a vote that's going to strike and hurt Ironburg, shame on us. So I'll vote for this resolution tonight, giving Ironburg 2 more years. COVID has struck. It's going to be 2 years of COVID, without a doubt. We heard Dr. Williams tonight. We've lost a year. It's probably going to be another year. Everything's a mess. Our county government's a mess. You know, we're doing the best we can. No one knows what's going to happen. But I would also, if someone besides Mr. Reagan would offer an amendment to change the distribution formula for that 1.8 million to come from our money and not the city of Ogdensburg and leave the city whole, I would support that resolution wholeheartedly. Leave it alone. And if anyone really has the courage to keep Ogdensburg whole for 10 years, except Mr. Reagan pushed into the resolution, I'll second that and support that too. I go back to the original, when I made the original comments to my first town board, leave it alone, leave it alone. I keep thinking, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We're all doing better. The city's struggling, and now we want to cut and preempt them to be fair to the towns and villages, supposedly, or to generate more money for us. In 2000, it was not broke, and we didn't fix it, and the city agreed to help. In 2010, it was not broke. Don't fix it, and everything was fine. In 2013, it wasn't broke. The county was broke, and the city stepped up to help out again. The reason I wanted at least 2 years to this, there's discussions going on between dispatch, assessment, contaminated properties, tax foreclosures with the city of Ogdensburg. And every time the discussions take place, they're muddy. The waters are muddy, and it always reverts back to sales tax. If the riverfront property, Mr. Scamparelli talked about earlier, is developed on the St. Lawrence River, everyone in this county is going to benefit. Everybody, not just the city of Ogdensburg. I've lost enough sleep. I get up every morning and tweet this. One member of this board said, the county's the parents, the villages, towns, city are our kids. And I believe in tough love. No, no less than anyone on this board, trust me. But I'll do the best for my kids. We've turned this county around in the last 6 years I've been here, and I'm proud of the accomplishments. I'm just asking everyone to do what's right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Forsyth. Mr. Arquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Legislator Forsyth began by identifying me as Tony the Tough Guy and TV Tough Guy, I guess, and then went on to say that I called him weak. Well, that was in executive session, so there's an absolute violation of the sanctity of executive session. And when I said he was weak, I meant he was weak. He's probably the weakest negotiator that I've ever come across, and I made negotiations a career choice in my entire life. But I think that what we've lost sight of through that very agonizing display of drama that we just witnessed and all the percentages that he threw out there, what we've lost sight of is this is an algorithm. It's an algorithm that speaks to true value assessment. It's an algorithm that speaks to population. It's based on a 10-year cycle. And 10 years ago, Ogdensburg got a really, really sweet deal in the distribution process. So, and probably the most ironic thing about all of Mr. Forsyth's statements is that he was one of the people in the lead to take everything from Ogdensburg. He very strongly one of the people in the lead of that. And now, obviously, he's done a 180, and that's okay. We research and we investigate, and it's to everybody's advantage at some time to change their mind on something. But again, we're being portrayed as the, and Chairman Lightfoot just talked about the state taking our money to fulfill their obligations, which at the beginning of this, I made the statement public many times that it was no different what we were doing. We were taking from Ogdensburg only to fulfill our obligations. But I did my research, and what it showed was that we provide services to every town and village in this county, many services within those towns and villages and the city of Ogdensburg. So the reason that I came aboard with wanting to take a look at the negotiation and take a look at treating Ogdensburg much like a town or a village is because I represent Massena. Massena carried the water for this entire county for years and years with the industrial plants, with the car dealerships, with all the other sales tax generators. And Massena's getting far less than what Ogdensburg is. And the same applies to Potsdam, Canton, Gouverneur, all the bigger places. They're getting a distribution based on a village allotment, when Ogdensburg, again, for the last 10 years, has been fortunate enough to get above and beyond what they really should have done. But that was an agreement. That was an agreement that was made 10 years ago. And so, far before Mr. Scamparelli or some of the other members of that board were there, money was obviously mismanaged. And, so the intent was to really to make a right out of a wrong. Things change. Many folks, as Dave referred to, want to wait for the assessment to come through, or the census to come through and show that there's been a loss in population, show that there's a loss in true value assessment. Nobody, I believe, if there's one thing I can speak to for this entire board, is there's not a board member sitting here that wants to see Ogdensburg fail. I really do not believe one person here wants to see Ogdensburg fail, but we all represent towns and villages. So if Ogdensburg is getting a disproportionate amount of the sales tax distribution, and that money could come back into the county to provide those services at a better way to all the towns and villages, it seemed to be a pretty good stroke of business. I do agree with Dave, and that it got political. I feel it was a very poor move by leadership to go to every town with their financial disclosures and speak to the fact that the county did not need or have to distribute sales tax to each one of them was a poor move in my opinion. And that certainly began the chaos that we're experiencing now. Anyway, I personally am struggling with going another 2 years after we already agreed to allot this year, 2020, for them to get their finances in order for the changes that were going to be made. That was a tough and generous move, I think, on behalf of the county. We are now looking at an additional 2 years, extremely generous. And again, I have no interest in seeing Ogdensburg fail, but I have a lot of consternation with the way the county has been made to look through this negotiation. When again, it's about fairness and equitability. It's not about demand taken from the smaller entity and setting them up for failure. That was never the intent, I don't think, from any of us. So I just want to be very clear that no matter how this vote goes on this particular resolution, that there was intent to bring a good and proper negotiation between the county and Ogdensburg to bring them back into a degree of fairness and equitability where all the other villages and towns were concerned. That was my intent. I know it was the intent of many, and it's gotten very clouded by a lot of these other opinions and dramatizations like we just saw from Mr. Forsythe. Thank you.
Okay, I believe Mrs. Haggart was next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm new here. Some of you guys have years on me, not in age, but you know what I mean. When somebody's trying to convince me of something, I'm not used to feeling insulted to get there. So I want to go back and maybe address some of these things. The assumption that you and Mr. Fay are the only business owners on the board that understand sales tax, I think that's what I heard, is a wrong assumption. I think you don't know enough about the background of some of the people on this board. They have experience in that, current business owners who do understand it. Furthermore, I have to look, and I always try to. I was brought up this way. There's a silver lining here. Mr. Forsythe had never reached out to me on any other issue. We had a productive and I thought very cordial conversation. I've spoken with several other of the Republican legislators on the board, and to me, that's a plus of going through this process. It has not been fun. I know that. It's hard to always have your county hat on. I attribute this whole concept to Mr. Lightfoot. I'd like to think about the town and village of Potsdam, but we also have to have a county hat, and I have no interest in doing anything to any people or entities in the city of Ogdensburg. I do, although, feel that that was assumed from the get-go, and I will call it the tail wagging the dog. Because I'm a Democrat, it was assumed I wasn't going to go for this. I was attacked during the election because of it. And from the get-go, I have felt like this whole process has been backwards. Maybe that's me. I'm new here. I already said that. If you don't want to be in a political situation, you better leave, because this is politics. I get that. And I am tough. I'm going to assume that Mr. Forsythe's argument tonight was in general and not directed to anybody in particular. But I do want to say that I appreciate the ability we've had, maybe a little bit behind the scenes, but it has happened, that I have spoken to many of the Republican members of this board, and that's a plus. If we can continue to do that, I am not, I don't understand, and somebody, if you want to jump in and correct the new girl, okay? I don't understand why this has to be done right now, okay? I know we're all sick of it. I know we want to come to a conclusion with this, but there's just so many loose ends. Maybe that's from my perspective. I appreciate Mr. Forsythe's passion about this. He was very clear how he explained it to me when we spoke on the phone, and I do appreciate it. But please don't assume that there are not people on this board, and particularly women business owners, that would clearly understand what the sales tax is about. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just quick point of order. Ms. Haggard, I was one of the 14 that probably don't understand the retail financial. I wasn't with Mr. Fay. And if I came across that way, I'm sorry. Mr. Fay's probably got the economy experience, not me. I'm an insurance guy.
Okay, I think, yeah, I didn't know what you meant by the comment either. I took umbrage with that. But Mr. Burke, I believe you were next, and then we have Mr. Denisha.
Well, I just wanted to address some of the things you said, Dave, and again, you know, maybe to make a comment that you had a really tough assignment. I don't know. I don't know how you come out ahead when you're given such a polarizing task to do. But I think for sure there isn't anybody that wants to harm Ogdensburg. I think the resistance that has been viewed is primarily one to seek what we believe is a fair and equitable distribution. And again, there's arguments on both sides about what that entails. And I think when the vote comes, you might be surprised as to who supports what. Again, Ogdensburg's in a tough spot, and I don't believe that there's a person on the board that would intentionally harm Ogdensburg in any way. But there is a balance, and that balance has to be what we believe is fair for all the distribution among towns and villages as well as the city. So it'll be interesting to see how this vote occurs. But again, you had a tough job, and the city of Ogdensburg is in a tough spot. And I think we all know that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Burke. Mr. Denisha.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to keep it brief. I'll start out. I supported the resolution as presented. First time I looked at it, I still support it. You know, it's I think about it was only 6 years ago. 6 years ago that we sat here and we were in dire straits. We were borrowing $12-13 million a year just to pay our bills. We were fortunate. We worked hard. We worked as a group. There were no politics involved in it. We worked hard. And we were fortunate as well. Sales tax rose. We benefited from a lot of good things, but there was a lot of hard work. we're in a much better place now. We're in a place where, this past year, we made $257,000 in interest. Down from last year, but still, we're in a much better place. We were paying $800,000 a year to borrow other people's money. So, I think, I thought about that, and my thought is to, it's only 3 years that we're talking. What that does, it gives the city of Ogdensburg time to get their house in order, or not. That's going to be up to them. I think we give the city of Ogdensburg, it's within our power to give the city of Ogdensburg the same opportunity that we had. They inherited this situation. Ogdensburg citizens, they're residents of St. Lawrence County. They're taxpayers of St. Lawrence County. It was talked about a while ago, a couple weeks ago maybe, that by extending this, we were just kicking the can down the road. Well, I don't believe that that's the case, because there is an end date. This is not an ad infinitum. There's a date that says you have your house in order, or you have to make some decisions. I think about the hypocrisy of it all. We've seen Albany taking our sales tax revenue to fund hospitals in distress. We've seen Albany cutting our CHIPS funding. We've seen a lot of money redirected. I don't want to be guilty of the same thing that accuse somebody else of doing. So I think what it comes down to, in my mind, is do what's right. The down, I do not believe in kicking somebody when they're down. I do believe in giving them a hand, but that's it. Get an opportunity to turn it around. If you can't turn it around, well, that's on you, not on us.
Anyone else? Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This definitely has been tough. I guess Pandora's box has been open. I've been saying right along, they've said it, but some people don't believe, but I believe the county is a parent, towns, villages, the cities are the children. We have to take care of them. Sometimes you have to have tough love, for sure. But also, as Dave said, back in 1999, the county went to Ogdensburg and asked them for their help, and they helped us. I have not been for the 2-year additional resolution. I've been for one. I don't want to see Ogdensburg fail. I don't want to be the one saying that I was part of the reason that people lost homes or whatever it is, and whatever mental issues may derive from it, or suicides or drug use, whatever may happen from the despair. That weighs heavy on me. So I feel real hard about that. So I think we have to come to some sort of a resolution. I thought I hammered the mayor pretty well in one of our negotiations on his tactics, his unfair negotiations, going into the media, going to the towns and basically threatening him and telling them things that weren't true. I told him that if he did that again, I would not support any other resolution to help them. Well, a week later, he did that. So I was adamant about not helping him. But that's my personality to him. And I can't do that. I have to think about the citizens of Ogdensburg, and that's what I'm thinking about right now. So that's where I'm leading with this. So that's where my vote will end up being when I vote.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Perkins. Mr. Sheridan.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, there's a saying, the Lord helps those who help themselves. And I think from what I read in the newspapers, when it comes to the city of Augsburg, maybe Mr. Scamparelli can add to my list, but I know that they've been doing some things that really looks to me like they are trying to help themselves in the midst of this whole situation. I know we've talked about a lot tonight, what and where they've helped us in the past. Mr. Scamparelli, I'd like to give him the floor and have him give me a list of some of the things that have been accomplished and decided on with the city council just recently, where you're changing maybe some of the ways there at Augsburg for those people who are concerned about overspending and not cutting and not making the sacrifices that we would like to hope maybe that we would have done maybe with the last boards.
Okay.
Could you have the?
Let me ask for a show of hands who would like to hear from City Councilman Scamparelli. So we got 1, 2. They believe we have a majority. Can you keep it within 5, Scamp?
Keep it less than that even. It just, you know, we've got some brownfield property, I'll start there, that has been in the process of getting cleaned up and right along the waterfront, and it's still in the process. Most of it's pretty darn close to being cleaned and marketable. As a matter of fact, we've had a gentleman recently buy some property next door, and I wouldn't be surprised if he turns around and invests in some of that property as well. I know we're talking. We have the Newell building, which was blight for years, and a nice industrial building, has just gotten a grant. It's been cleaned. It has a little bit more of cleaning to do. We have a purchaser waiting to buy it. We're working with the IDA on that. We're putting in money. The IDA is as well. The airport, I know was mentioned. We did work out a great deal that benefited the OBPA, and it does help the county. Again, we're renewing a security agreement with the OBPA. Recently, they felt that our what we wanted was too much, and so we lowered it to try and keep them alive as well and meet them halfway. So we're trying to do that as well. Obviously, the prisons have been on the line, and prisons, of course, aren't an economic driver in terms of retail, but they keep people in the city spending money, millions of dollars, in fact. And so we've recently got the state to invest heavily in both prisons and try and come up with a more efficient energy system and things like that. And as you saw by the bad news today, the state has cut, I can't remember if it was 3 or 5 prisons Augsburg escaped. And it looks like as far as the North Country is concerned, well, it's a different conversation. But these are some of the things we're doing. We've also invested in our wastewater treatment. Our infrastructure, like many towns around New York State and cities, it was faltering. We are revamping our wastewater treatment facility to accommodate much larger than Augsburg in hopes to creating a water district. I know Hewleton's signed on board, and there's other talks with other towns. Don't know if I could talk about that, so I won't, but I know that we're trying to create a water district that's bigger and have a facility that will hopefully encourage economic development in the area too as well. That'll handle industrial waste, things of that nature. We finally have settled a lawsuit that's been going on for 9 years, I think, to clean up a cheese plant. We have a district that when we got state money to refacilitate Ogdensburg and to try and market Ogdensburg, we've created a river district. It was dying when I had gotten on council 10 years ago. The bridges were faltering. You couldn't even walk from one side of town to the other. We've put in a walk bridge. We've worked with developers in the area, what's called the Marina District, trying to create a bar, restaurant sort of scene that we see in so much of the rest of the world. Hosmer's and now another gentleman has bought a marina next to him, and I think this year he's gonna start construction on that to expand. And of course, the Fort is trying to add to their properties, and they have in the last few years to create more action and revenue. The fishing tournaments are going on. I know this year got canceled, but we're shooting. That's one of the big aspects of Augsburg. It is unlike Alex Bay or Clayton. We have a different dynamic, and Augsburg is more of a fishery type of community because of the peacefulness and things like that. So these are just a few of the things that we're doing. There's probably more off the top of my head, but
Controller's office. Are you doing something with controller?
So
Controller?
internally within the city, we've downsized quite a bit. We've taken our recreation department and moved it under DPW, downsized there. Our fire department, when these negotiations started and the comptroller's office came and gave us several recommendations, they, in terms of the fire department, now across the line, when it came to the fire department, this is a big issue on the scene now, they asked us to downsize. They were looking for 20, but on the same token, almost in the same area, they want us to hire EMTs, which I didn't quite understand. So we ended up making a union bargaining agreement to downsize, since our fire department already does EMT, downsize to 24 right now through attrition, and I suspect that'll be downsized soon. Obviously, there's an argument in the city. Another thing that we've done is the leasing of vehicles using state money. We had a deteriorated fleet in almost every department there was. And the state came up with a plan for us that would work, and they actually paid the upfront cost for us to start a leased vehicle program where they will now, all the preventive maintenance will be taken care of, really give us a good solid footing in terms of our vehicle fleet in the city of Augsburg.
So your mayor says that if they preempt it, they would do just as well. What's your take?
I disagree.
So right now you're getting 3.7 million. Where do you think you'd be at?
You know, it would be unfair to say anything because we really don't know. We are trying to look at the numbers and examine them, and there's so many different factors. Even Legislator Forsyth brought one up tonight about car sales and things like that. We have reached out to the comptroller's office, Daryl Albertine. I mean, I know him personally, and they've tried to give us some numbers, and it's almost impossible. It's if nothing else, we need time to figure it out, to see what we can do.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Smithers.
Thank you, Mr. Akers. I would just like to say that I am encouraged by a lot of the comments that I'm hearing tonight, and especially from Legislator Haggard, that although this process has been kind of rough and tumble, it's good to hear that we're able to work together. I think the bottom line is, despite disagreement on some issues, we're all on the same team. I'd like to look at us as being in a partnership with the city, with the towns and the villages. And I have learned a lot about this issue of sales tax, even though I've been a business owner for 40 years that I didn't know before. And I have come to the conclusion, in agreement with you, Mr. Akers, that, and I'm hearing a lot of people say that there needs to be a correction. And fairness is a question, but it's going to take some time to get there. And like Legislator Denisha said, I think we see a solution that we can all agree on, but it's going to take us some time to get there. And to support this, which I will, I think that gives the city time to, and they're hearing us, I'm sure, that there needs to be some changes, and they're making corrections also. And I'm just willing to give them that additional time in order to get where it sounds like we agree that we need to get to eventually. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smithers. Anyone that hasn't spoken for the first time? Mr. Reagan, would you like to enter in?
I'd like to give everyone a chance.
Okay,
to-
so I think everyone's been around that wants to speak the first time. Rita Curran, Ms. Curran?
Hi there. I will be supporting this resolution. I believe that 3 years is 30% of what they were originally asking, which was a 10-year deal with the same sales tax as they had had before. I think that they've made a lot of good changes and that will positively affect their financial situation over the next 3 years. And just like we're kind of all in this together with the COVID and we go help whatever place needs to be helped, we're going to have to help the city. And it's a little bit more than what I wanted to do, but I really feel in my heart that it's the right thing to do for them. So I will be voting yes, and I thank you.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Burke, we're back to you. Yep.
It'll be brief. Just wanted to comment on what Harry said. Certainly, we can work together, and I think we all have a shared interest. Just a friendly reminder that as we consider Ogdensburg's struggles and challenges, that the same consideration needs to be given to other communities as their challenges arise. And the other part of this is that at the end of 3 years, some thought needs to be given as to what those resources, how they will be deployed to the benefit of all county residents. So it's great to talk about having fairness and helping Ogdensburg out during the transition, but at the end of 3 years, there will be, at today's formula, there would be an additional $2 million or close to that coming into the county. And the question needs to be addressed for our public as to how that money would be used to their benefit. Thank you.
So just a correction on that, I believe that $2 million would be back in the pool, so the towns would share the same 43%, I think, John. Somebody can correct me on that. But I know that, I'm talking to Mr. Perkins, the 2018 data that I sent to everyone, Mr. Perkins said it was unclear, it was blurred. So I don't know if that was the case for everybody, but it shows that 24 million back in 2018, which is based on the 2010 census and the 2018 assessments of that of the properties, that the difference would be
1.96, yeah,
60 million. So that would then redistribute it to the towns and the villages. So that formulation and that data that I sent you included the 6.43% of the 3%. It included the 6.43% of the 1%. It included the 10% that the towns and villages, and then the towns and villages share. Had nothing to do with the county. So in that data that I sent you was a redistribution basically of $1.9 million to spread out over to the communities. Nothing in addition to the counties.
Oh, I'm aware of that, but that's good to know.
Okay.
I'm in favor.
So, Mrs. Haggard.
Okay, that point you just made, Mr. Chairman, is very important, and you're sure of that, right?
Yes, I can ask Dylan Soper, who put that information together. I told him I maybe subpoena him tonight, so he may be available.
Bring him
Dylan, are
on.
you there? Okay,
Bring him up
Dylan?
to the stand.
Hi, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So can you, if you were listening in, can you answer that question? That data that I submitted to them in 2018 that I showed you this evening was totally a reflection of the 24 million that the towns and the city would collect in its entirety and redistribute it in its appropriate measures.
Yes, that is the scenario. So you had showed me what you had sent around before the meeting. That is the scenario for that cost out. That assumes that their 6.43% goes in to the town and the village formula and is redistributed by the assessed valuation and population formula. I'm not sure that that's I wasn't sure whether that was the situation we were talking about on this resolution or not. I wasn't sure if that was clear, but what you had showed me prior to the meeting, yes.
Right. No, it's in reference to the data that I sent to the legislators. Okay. Is that, are you done, Mrs. Haggard, or you have a follow-up or?
No, that's exactly what I wanted to know. Thank you, Dylan, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
Okay. Mr. Perkins.
That's not how my understanding was. My understanding was that money was going to go back to the county. I don't remember it going to the towns, villages at all. The only recollection I had was it was going to go to the county. That's my.
Okay. So I think the original intent was, I think when Mr. Forsyth had brought up about how the inequity really was in that last 1%, where I think last year the city got 937,000 and the rest of the 32 towns shared 1.4 million. And I think it was Mr. Forsyth's proposal that they really needed to take about a $600,000 cut. And actually Mr. Forsyth proposed taking in our meeting with the past city manager, Sarah Purdy, and what's Tim's last name?
Johnson.
Tim Johnson, that we do that over the course of 3 years. And they basically explained to us that they couldn't even take a $50,000 a year cut. So that's but that was Dave's calculations. So this was one of the scenarios that we asked for, the 8 scenarios, the sales tax committee, of what happens when you do the math, and this is what they represent. Unfortunately, they were looked at as proposals, which they were not, but that shows it. So who's up next?
I just got.
Mr. Forsyth.
Thank you. The only thing, Steve, are you there?
He wouldn't miss it.
The 1% extender is the word. What do we have to do to make sure the 1% extender, if this is okay, what do we have to do?
All right, just so that it's clear for everybody that's out there, what was relayed to me when I was working on drafting this resolution was that the current offer as it stood would see the first 2 years of essentially year 2 and year 3 of a 10-year agreement continue to be the same. So that's the 50% to the county, that's 6.4% to the city of Ogdensburg, that's the 43%, 43.6 or 43.7 going to the towns and villages. That upon year 3, should the city exercise its preemption, the towns and villages would continue to receive the 43.6, 43.7% share. The 6.4% share would then become a part of the collective of the county. If the city did not preempt, their 6.4% would be added to the 43.7 or 43.3, excuse me, and that would collectively accumulate 50%. That would then be distributed to the towns, villages, and the city based on population and assessment for years 4 through 10, which would get us to November 30th of 2030. So I wanted to get that out there just so that it was clear as to what assumptions I was working on while drafting on the resolution. Now, right now, because we originally passed the extender on the first percent at a time when we had no agreement with the city of Ogdensburg beyond 1 year, the 1%, which was enabled by legislation that came through in the state's budget process, permitted us to impose the 1% for 3 years. If you look back at that resolution that you passed back, if I recall correctly, in June, it may have been July. The board imposed the additional 1% for the 3-year period, but with distribution to the city only through November 30th of 2021. At that time, we had no guarantee that there would be additional distribution to the city beyond that. I would have to go to the state, both the Department, the State Department of Taxation and Finance, as well as to the Comptroller's Office, to confirm that we would be able to continue to distribute the additional 1% as is anticipated for as long as we're permitted to impose and collect it with the city of Ogdensburg. What I was informed by the State Department of Taxation and Finance was that they did not anticipate that it would be a problem to continue to distribute to the city, even though they were not considered in our initial resolution that adopted the 3-year position. Does that clarify the 1% position?
Yes, yep. Mr. Lightfoot.
Mute, Joe.
So what I'm seeing here is a little nebulous, at least in my mind. I don't see a clear formula for how this is going to be distributed, especially in light that everybody's overlooking the fact that when the city preempts, and that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's a foregone conclusion that has been put out there by the mayor, by Mr. Jelly, and I think even Dave, Dave agrees that that's what's going to happen. When that happens, the county loses 1.5% of whatever is collected in the city of Ogdensburg. That's not being taken into consideration. And the question that I guess needs to be answered is what effect that will have on the distributions. We haven't even looked at that. Nobody has. And we're expected that we're going to vote on this tonight. I don't think so. I'm not willing to vote on this tonight and say, yep, okay, let's do it. I think there's way too many questions as to how that's going to get distributed. That's the sticking point that I'm seeing right there. And while I agree with just about everybody else that nobody wants to see the city go broke, nobody wants to see the city go bankrupt, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that somewhere or sometime here in the near future, we will come to some kind of an agreement that provides something for the city. What that something is at this stage of the game, I have no idea. But I think we're in a big hurry to get this done. And as Ms. Haggard has said, what's a hurry? We already agreed to a year that is in effect right now. I don't see anybody, running to the doors, running to get experts, running to Albany to get answers to the questions that they have. How they're going to fix their bridge. Have they gone to the federal government over that like they were advised to do? I don't know. I think there's a lot left to be done. That being said, I'm willing to invest the time in it and come up with something. Now, I think that all of you are aware where I stand on this. I was ready to go for an additional year. I'm not in favor of going out 3 more years. I wasn't in favor of going out 2 more years. I was in favor of the year that we agreed to. When we met last, because it was portrayed to me that everybody was on board with an additional 2-year agreement, and I was standing alone, I thought, well, I think it's the best thing to have a unanimous group, a unanimous agreement going forward. And I agreed that I would support what this says. But until there's some clarity with respect to the sharing, who gets what, when, and how we factor in that 1.5% that we will lose when the city does preempt, I would not be in favor of it tonight.
Okay. Mrs. Haggard's up for the third time. I'd be interested in hearing from those that have not. Mr. Reagan is, I'm sorry, Mrs. Haggard, it wasn't a sexist thing. Just take that for granted. Jim Reagan has his hand up. He'd like to go first.
No, please let Mrs. Haggard.
No, go ahead.
Please.
Okay, he defers to Mrs. Haggard.
Thank you, Mr. Reagan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do like to talk. What I'm going to say is very quick. I really appreciate what Mr. Scamperly, is that how it's pronounced?
Scamparelli?
Scamparelli.
Scamparelli, I would think, right?
He's been called worse.
I've been called worse.
I always call him Scamp because I really don't know what it is. I think it's Scamparelli.
Mr. Scamparelli, because I honestly am sick of reading about this in the press and hearing about it on TV with it. I really haven't appreciated some of that, but tonight he came in, he made some really concrete, good points, and I want to thank him for that. That I will not raise my hand again, I don't think.
We like to hear from you, Mrs. Haggard. Don't be shy. Mr. Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I just wanted to thank some of the people in this room. I remember a year and a half ago when it was 14-1, and I made the statement a year ago that I was waiting for common sense to break out. I had, repeatedly warned the board that the problem with this, with tampering with the sales tax, divides us and pits our communities against each other. It has certainly divided this legislature and created a lot of hard feelings and upset many people. And a lot of the reason is members of the board say, we just want to treat Ogdensburg the way we treat the towns and villages. And then when Ogdensburg says, well, what about the fact that we have one of the longest bridges in the county, and the county provides, takes care of the bridges for the other towns, we say, well, that doesn't apply to Ogdensburg. You're still going to get stuck with the bridge. We just want to take your money. When the city points out that they make the school district whole, and it costs them large amounts of money, we tell them, well, that's too bad. You'll continue to do that, but we want to take your money. When this city points out that the county has a very effective program of cleaning up polluted properties, we say, well, yeah, but you'll have to pay for that. Over the point, was often made, oh, the city, is being stubborn and isn't offering any proposals. But every time the city pointed out issues where we could work together, issues where there could be some fairness, the city was told, no, we just want to take your money. There's been a change of heart among numerous legislators on this board who realized that there's something very wrong with the idea of kicking one of our largest communities when it's down. There's been a certain amount of belief that Ogdensburg is divided, that its elected officials are divided, its citizens are divided. And I think Dave made a great point earlier tonight. You know, when our community sees an outside threat, we come together. And, you know, so far, you've not seen our residents come to march on the courthouse. However, you know, I think it's very important for this board to treat the city of Ogdensburg fairly and work with the city of Ogdensburg in order to help the city of Ogdensburg rebuild its finances, grow its economy, get our waterfront properties back on the tax rolls, use our very effective treasurer's office auction system to sell a lot of the vacant properties in the city that have not sold through the city's auction process. There are real opportunities where the county and the city can work together and improve its economy and the county's economy and help make Ogdensburg an engine for growth, because we have built an infrastructure that is going to be the central infrastructure for this part of northern New York. The wastewater treatment plant, which has been derided by some people, when it is done, it will be one of the only wastewater treatment plants in the North Country that can do classes of industrial waste that the other communities in the county cannot do. It'll have capacity to treat Hubleton's waste, Lacerdo's waste, and potentially other communities' waste as well, while helping to keep Ogdensburg's sewer rates down. Ogdensburg's water system is second to none and has the capacity to help provide water service outside of the city of Ogdensburg. I bring up these points simply to make this point, and that is we need to put this issue behind us. We need to stop making every one of our meetings in executive session a shouting match, a source of anger, a source of division. Especially now during the holiday season, it's time for us to try to work together. And I strongly encourage all of you to support this resolution. Let's put this behind us so that we do not continue to distract everyone from the real accomplishments that this board has made and some of the real accomplishments that this county can make by working with the city of Ogdensburg. Thank you.
Mr. Lightfoot.
I would agree with Mr. Reagan that we need to do something, but we got to do it with the information that we don't have. If we're going to pass a resolution, we ought to know what's in it, and it ought to be very clear what's in it. And this resolution is not very clear. All of the things that are going to weigh in on this have not been considered in how the distribution is going to be made. How long is that going to take to figure that out? How long is that going to take to put a plan in place or a means in place to come up with some semi-accurate figures as to how this is going to look in the final product. If that can happen, I'm sure that we can come to some kind of accommodation agreement, whatever you want to call it. But right now, we don't have that. And we would be putting forward, if we pass this resolution as is, we would be remiss in our duties, at least in my estimation. So I would ask you to consider that. There's nothing wrong with holding off on this for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It's not going to make a whit. The city of Ogdensburg has already got an extra year ending in November of 2021 to do whatever they want to do between now and then to, come to some decision on how they are going to address those problems that they have. If in a month we can put some flesh on what needs to be in this resolution, I think we'd finish it in 20 minutes.
Okay, Mr. Forsyth, then Mr. Arquette.
I think I can finish it in 1 minute. If we take the 6.43 divided by 2, and if you're going to do as we did with the original resolution to make the towns and villages whole, you'll take that 6.43%, let's call it 3.2. So you'd be giving 46.3% to the towns and villages, and you'd be keeping the remainder, and the city's on its own. All you gotta do is take that 6.4 that the city's getting, and we already passed a resolution keeping the towns and county whole. And if we change that, we're gonna have to change that resolution.
That would be if the city preempted, though.
But
you were talking there. Mr. Arquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in full agreement with Chairman Lightfoot. What's a couple weeks or a month when we're talking about a 10-year agreement? I'm in full support of holding off, and I move to table this resolution.
Is there a second?
A question to a point in time, Tony?
Until we have the information gathered, I'll say our next finance committee.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sheridan and Ms. Haggard. Okay, so roll call vote on the motion to table. Ms. Kelly.
Just give me a minute. My computer decided to restart. Curran?
No.
Reagan?
No.
Forsyth?
No.
Lightfoot?
Yes.
Sheridan?
No.
Smithers?
No.
Denisha?
No.
Perkins?
No.
Akers?
Yes.
Fay? Fay?
Yes.
Haggard?
Yes.
Diaco?
Yes.
Burt?
Yes.
Arquette?
Yes.
Terminelli?
Yes.
Eight yes, 7 no.
Okay, does it have to be 2/3? I don't recall. Mr. Button?
No.
Not on a table and not at a committee meeting.
So 8-7, the resolution's tabled. Is that correct, Ms. Kelly?
8 yes, 7 no.
Okay, so the resolution is tabled.
To finance, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, next up is executive session. Ms. Doyle, do we have a need for any of the A, B, C, or D?
Only D for appointments tonight.
Okay, so entertain a motion to go into executive session made by Mr. Perkins, seconded by? Would anybody like to second? Mr. Smithers seconds it. All those in favor going into executive session, put your hand up and say aye. Aye.